When the CEO whispered, "Stop looking at the bride, look at me," I knew my carefully ordered life was about to shatter. What happens when a single father falls for the one woman who could destroy everything he's built? When professional boundaries blur and boardroom whispers turn dangerous? This is the story of a choice that defied every rule, risked every carefully constructed wall, and proved that some connections are worth the fall. Stay with me until the end of this journey. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The champagne flutes caught the late afternoon sun like 1,000 tiny promises, refracting light across the manicured lawn that sloped down to the harbor. Daniel Wright stood near the back row of white chairs, his charcoal suit feeling slightly too formal, slightly too tight across the shoulders. He debated coming at all. Saturday afternoons were sacred. Emma time, playground time, the kind of unhurried hours where a 6-year-old could demand 3 different snacks and change her mind about which park they were going to visit 4 times without consequence. But Marcus Chen, the groom, and Daniel's colleague in the marketing division had specifically asked him to come. "You're one of the good ones, right?" Marcus had said 2 weeks ago over terrible break-room coffee. "You actually show up for people. It would mean something." So Daniel had arranged for Mrs. Patterson next door to watch Emma, had ironed this suit that still smelled faintly of the dry cleaner's chemicals, and had driven 40 minutes north to this waterfront estate where tech money met old money, and everyone pretended the distinctions didn't matter. The ceremony hadn't started yet. Guests milled about in clusters, their conversations a low murmur of congratulations and networking disguised as small talk. Daniel recognized faces from the office, product managers, senior developers, the VP of sales with his trademark bow tie. The company, Helix Innovations, had grown explosively in the past 3 years, ballooning from a scrappy startup to a legitimate player in the enterprise software space. Nearly a third of the guest list seemed to be Helix employees or investors. Daniel kept to himself, nodding politely when he caught someone's eye, but not actively seeking conversation. He'd never been good at the schmoozing part of corporate life. His strength was in the work itself, the campaigns he designed, the messaging he crafted, the way he could take a complex product feature and translate it into language that made potential customers actually care. Let others play the networking game. He had a daughter to get home to. Daniel Wright, as I live and breathe. He turned to find Jessica Morales, one of the creative directors, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. She pressed one into his hand before he could refuse. "I didn't think you did social events," she said with a knowing smile. "Aren't Saturdays reserved for princess tea parties and animated movies?" "Usually," Daniel admitted, taking a polite sip. The champagne was excellent, which somehow made him feel more out of place. But Marcus asked specifically, seemed important. "Marcus is good people," Jessica agreed. She glanced around, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Did you see who's here?" Daniel followed her gaze across the crowd but came up empty. "I'm terrible at this game, just tell me." "Lauren Cross." The name landed like a small detonation in Daniel's chest. He kept his face neutral, taking another sip of champagne to buy himself a moment. "The CEO is here." 3 rows from the front, left side, navy dress, minimal jewelry. Jessica was watching him carefully now, reading his reaction. "I've worked at Helix for 4 years and I've never seen her at an employee event. Not a holiday party, not a company picnic, nothing. But Marcus's sister used to work in the executive suite, so apparently there's some personal connection." Daniel didn't look. Not yet. He'd seen Lauren Cross exactly 4 times in his 2.5 years at the company. Once during his second week when she'd walked through the marketing floor with the CFO, both of them absorbed in some intense discussion about quarterly projections. Once at an all-hands meeting where she'd presented the annual strategy with the kind of crystalline clarity that made complex market dynamics sound almost simple. Once in the elevator, a 30-second ride during which she'd been on her phone the entire time and he'd tried very hard not to stare. And once, just 3 weeks ago, passing in the hallway outside the executive conference rooms. She'd been walking with 2 board members, listening intently, and for just a fraction of a second her eyes had met his. He'd thought about that eye contact more than was probably healthy. "Earth to Daniel." Jessica waved her hand in front of his face. "You okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." "Fine," he said quickly. Just surprised. Like you said, she doesn't usually do this kind of thing. Hmm? Hmm? Jessica's smile turned sly. Well, if you're planning to gawk, at least be subtle about it. The woman can probably feel when someone's staring at her from across a crowded room. I swear she has some kind of sixth sense. Before Daniel could formulate a response, music began to drift from somewhere near the arbor at the front, a string quartet transitioning into the processional. The scattered conversations quieted as guests moved to their seats. Jessica gave his arm a quick squeeze and headed toward her row. Daniel found his assigned seat, fourth row from the back, aisle side. And that's when he saw her. Lauren Cross was indeed 3 rows from the front, left side. The navy dress Jessica had mentioned was elegant in its simplicity, falling to just below the knee, paired with heels that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that looked effortless, but almost certainly wasn't. She stood as the music swelled, along with everyone else, turning to face the aisle where the wedding party would process. But something made her glance back, just for a moment. Their eyes met across the assembled guests, across the careful arrangement of chairs and floral arches and champagne-tinted sunlight. Daniel felt the impact of that gaze like a physical thing, not hostile, not cold, but assessing, aware. Then she turned back to face the front, and the moment dissolved. Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling his heart rate tick upward. "Get it together," he told himself. "You're a grown man, not a teenager with a crush. She's the CEO. You're a mid-level marketing strategist with a mortgage and a daughter and a life that doesn't have room for this kind of complication." The bride appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in white silk and lace, her face radiant beneath the veil. The guests made soft sounds of appreciation. Daniel tried to focus on the ceremony, on the reason they were all here, but found his attention drifting. Then Lauren Cross leaned slightly to her right, her voice pitched just loud enough for him to hear despite the 3 rows between them. "Stop looking at the bride. Look at me." The words were soft, almost playful, but they cut through everything else. The music, the rustling of fabric as guests settled into their seats, the distant sound of boats on the harbor. Daniel's breath caught. He wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. Maybe it had been meant for someone else. Maybe he'd imagined it entirely. But when he looked up, Lauren had turned her head just enough that he could see the faint curve of her lips. A smile that wasn't quite a smile. An acknowledgement. A dare. The ceremony proceeded around them. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about the joining of 2 lives into one shared journey. Marcus and his bride exchanged vows, their voices steady and sure. Rings were presented, blessed, slipped onto fingers. The guests laughed in the right places and grew quiet during the tender moments. Daniel heard approximately none of it. His entire awareness had narrowed to the woman 3 rows ahead, to the implications of 5 simple words. Stop looking at the bride. Look at me. It could have been a joke, a casual observation about his wandering attention, but the tone had been too deliberate, too specific. She'd noticed him, not just in this moment, but before. Otherwise, how would she know where he was seated? How would she know to direct that comment specifically at him? The ceremony concluded with applause and cheers as Marcus and his new wife were pronounced married. The couple kissed, then made their way back down the aisle, beaming. The guests rose, conversations resuming as everyone began migrating toward the reception area where cocktail hour was presumably underway. Daniel stood rooted in place, unsure of his next move. Part of him wanted to leave immediately, to get in his car and drive back to the safety of his small house where Emma would be watching cartoons and Mrs. Patterson would be knitting on the couch. Where life made sense. Where he knew the rules. But another part of him, a part that had been dormant for so long he'd almost forgotten it existed, wanted to stay. Wanted to see if those 5 words had meant what he thought they meant. You coming to cocktail hour, or are you going to stand here communing with the empty chairs? He looked up to find Lauren Cross standing in the aisle beside him. Up close, she was somehow both exactly as he'd imagined and entirely different. The photos on the company website didn't capture the intelligence in her eyes. The subtle lines at the corners that suggested she smiled more than her public persona let on. She was probably in her late 30s, though something about her carried an ageless quality. The The kind of presence that came from being absolutely certain of who you were. Daniel's mind went blank. He was 30 years old, a professional with a college degree and a successful career, and apparently he'd forgotten how to form complete sentences. Yes. Cocktail hour. I was just gathering my thoughts. About the ceremony? Her tone was neutral, but there was something underneath it. Amusement, maybe. Among other things. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. You're Daniel Wright. Marketing strategy, B2B campaigns. You ran the Dennison account push last quarter, exceeded projections by 18%. He blinked. You know my work? I make it a point to know what's happening in my company. She paused. Also, you have a daughter, Emma, I believe. You leave every day at 5:15 to pick her up from school. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was either incredibly flattering or the beginning of a conversation about professionalism and FaceTime. Is my schedule a problem? Not at all. Your output is consistently excellent, which means you've figured out how to be efficient with your time. I respect that. Lauren gestured toward the reception area. Walk with me? It wasn't really a question, but it was phrased like one. Daniel fell into step beside her as they moved along the path toward a large white tent strung with lights. Around them, other guests chatted and laughed, drinks already in hand. No one paid them particular attention, though Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that walking alongside the CEO made him hyper-visible. Can I ask you something? Lauren said as they entered the tent. Of course. Why did you come today? The question surprised him. Marcus invited me. We're friends. Are you? She accepted a glass of wine from a passing server, but Daniel noticed she didn't drink from it. I don't mean that as a challenge. I'm genuinely curious. You don't strike me as someone who does the social obligation thing unless it genuinely matters to you. Daniel considered this. It was true that he'd turned down dozens of invitations over the years. Happy hours, team-building events, birthday celebrations. Not out of rudeness, but out of necessity. Time was the one resource he never had enough of. Marcus showed up for me once, Daniel said finally. About a year ago, Emma got sick, really sick, pneumonia. I missed 2 weeks of work, and when I came back, I was buried. Marcus stayed late 3 nights in a row helping me catch up, even though it wasn't his responsibility. He never made a big deal about it, never asked for anything in return. So when he asked me to come to his wedding, yeah, it mattered. Lauren was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. Loyalty, she said softly. That's rare. Is it? In my experience, yes. She finally took a sip of her wine. Most people are loyal to outcomes, not to people. They'll show up when it benefits them, when it advances their position or protects their interests. But showing up because someone once showed up for you, because you genuinely care about their happiness, that's different. Daniel wasn't sure what to say to that. The conversation had taken a turn he hadn't expected, moving from surface pleasantries to something more substantial. He grabbed a glass of water from a passing tray, more to have something to do with his hands than out of thirst. You looked surprised, Lauren continued, when I mentioned I knew about your work, about Emma. I was, Daniel admitted. We've never actually spoken before. I didn't think I was on your radar. Everyone in the company is on my radar. She paused. But some people more than others. The tent had grown crowded. Guests clustered around high-top tables, plates of hors d'oeuvres in hand, the volume of conversation rising steadily. Daniel became aware that they'd been standing together for several minutes now, that people might notice, might wonder. Lauren Cross didn't do social events, Jessica had said. And yet here she was, making conversation with a mid-level employee instead of mingling with the board members and investors who were undoubtedly present. I should let you get back to, Daniel began, but Lauren interrupted him. There's a terrace, she said, nodding toward the far side of the tent where open French doors led out to what looked like a stone patio. It's quieter. I find these things exhausting. She started walking before he could respond, weaving through the crowd with the kind of ease that came from years of navigating spaces where she didn't quite fit, but had learned to command anyway. Daniel hesitated for half a second, then followed. The terrace was indeed quieter. A few guests had claimed the wrought iron furniture scattered about, but most had stayed inside where the food and drinks were more accessible. The sun was lower now, painting the harbor in shades of amber and rose. Sailboats drifted in the distance, their white sails catching the light. Lauren walked to the stone railing that bordered the terrace, looking out over the water. Daniel joined her, maintaining a respectful distance, hyper-aware of the space between them. "Do you know why I came today?" Lauren asked. "You said there was a personal connection. Marcus's sister?" "Lily Marcus. She was my assistant for 3 years, one of the best I've ever had. Organized, discreet, anticipated problems before they became crises. When she got married and moved to Portland, I was genuinely happy for her and genuinely devastated to lose her." Lauren set her wine glass on the railing. "She called me 2 months ago and asked if I'd come to her brother's wedding. Said it would mean the world to him to have me there, so I came." "That's kind of you," Lauren laughed, a short sound without much humor. "People don't usually describe me as kind. Effective, yes. Strategic, certainly. But kind." She shook her head. "I have a reputation, Daniel. I'm aware of it. The Ice Queen CEO who cares more about quarterly earnings than people, who fires underperformers without blinking, who's all business, all the time. Is that reputation accurate?" "Parts of it." She turned to face him directly now, leaning back against the railing. "I do care about the company's performance. I do make hard decisions about personnel when necessary. But the idea that I don't care about people, that's not true. It's just easier to let people believe it. Keeps things simpler." Daniel studied her, this woman he'd seen from a distance dozens of times but never actually known. "Simpler how?" "People don't expect things from you when they think you're cold. They don't ask for special treatment or emotional labor. They keep their distance, which means fewer complications." She paused. "Until recently, I thought that was what I wanted." The implication hung in the air between them. Daniel's pulse quickened. What changed? Lauren held his gaze. "I started noticing someone who didn't seem to want anything from me, who didn't try to network or impress or position himself for advancement, who just showed up, did excellent work, and went home to be with his daughter, someone who seemed to have his priorities straight in a way most people don't." Daniel's mouth had gone dry. "Lauren, I know this is inappropriate," she said quickly. "I know all the reasons this conversation shouldn't be happening. Power dynamics, workplace ethics, the fact that we're at a wedding, and I'm probably reading way too much into one moment of eye contact during a ceremony." She laughed again, this time with genuine humor. "I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to be better at maintaining boundaries than this." "You're also human," Daniel said quietly. "Am I?" The question was light, but he could hear the genuine uncertainty underneath it. "Sometimes I wonder. I've spent so many years being the role instead of the person that I'm not sure where one ends and the other begins anymore." A burst of laughter erupted from inside the tent, reminding them both that they weren't truly alone, that this pocket of privacy was temporary and fragile. Daniel knew he should say something to diffuse the tension, to step back from whatever edge they were approaching, but the words that came out were different. "I noticed you too," he said. "Not just today. Before." Lauren's expression shifted, surprise, pleasure, something more complicated. "Yeah? 3 weeks ago. You were walking with board members near the executive conference rooms. We passed each other in the hallway, and you looked at me for maybe half a second. I thought about it for the rest of the day." He felt heat creeping up his neck but pushed forward. "I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was nothing, that you probably didn't even remember it." "I remember," Lauren said softly. "You were carrying 3 different project folders and a coffee that looked dangerously close to spilling. You had this expression like you were mentally organizing everything you needed to accomplish in the next 2 hours. And when our eyes met, you smiled. Just a little, like you were surprised to see another human being in the middle of your chaos." Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "So what do we do with this?" "I don't know," Lauren admitted. "This isn't territory I've navigated before. I don't date people from work. I don't date much at all, honestly. The last few years have been consuming. Building the company, managing the board, trying to prove that I deserve the position. There hasn't been room for much else." "I understand that," Daniel said. "Different circumstances, but I get it. After Emma was born, after her mother left. He paused, still unused to talking about it even 3 years later. Everything became about survival, making sure Emma was okay, that we were okay. There wasn't energy left over for anything else. Her mother left? Lauren's voice was gentle, careful. When Emma was 2, we weren't married, hadn't been together long. When she got pregnant, we tried to make it work, but Daniel shrugged. She didn't want to be a mother, didn't want the responsibility. One day she just said she couldn't do it anymore and left. I haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry. I'm not, Daniel said, and meant it. Emma deserves a parent who actually wants to be there. We're better off without someone who sees her as an obligation. Lauren nodded slowly. You're a good father, I can tell. How? The way you talk about her, the way you've structured your life around her needs. The way you don't apologize for leaving at 5:15 because you know what matters. She paused. Also, Jessica Morales talks about you sometimes. Says you're one of the most genuine people in the company, that what you see is what you get. Jessica talks to you about me? Daniel couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. We have lunch occasionally. She's one of the few people who treats me like a person instead of a position. Lauren smiled. Don't look so worried. She's never said anything inappropriate. Just mentioned that you seem like one of the good ones. That you actually care about people, not just outcomes. She's not wrong about that, Daniel said. Though I'm not sure I'm as saint-like as she's making me sound. I don't want a saint, Lauren said, her voice dropping slightly. Saints are boring. The air between them seemed to thicken. Daniel was acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the fact that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made him want to lean closer. This was dangerous territory. This was his boss's boss's boss, a woman who could fire him with a phone call, who held his career in her hands. But she was also just Lauren, a person who seemed as uncertain and surprised by this connection as he was. I should be clear about something, Daniel said carefully. I have a daughter who depends on me. I can't afford to be reckless. Can't risk my job or my stability because, he struggled to find the right words, because of something that might not be real, or that might be real but unsustainable. I understand, Lauren said, and I respect that. Your daughter comes first, as she should. But? Daniel could hear the unspoken word hanging between them. But I also think we're both adults who are capable of making thoughtful decisions, who can acknowledge an attraction without acting impulsively on it, who can... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Who can explore what this might be if we're smart about it? What does smart about it look like? I don't know yet, Lauren admitted. But maybe we start by having dinner, not here, not at a company event. Somewhere private, somewhere we can actually talk without an audience. See if this thing we're both feeling has any substance beyond the romance of a wedding and good lighting. Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. This was a bad idea. This was absolutely, unquestionably a bad idea. Lauren Cross was the CEO. There were policies about this sort of thing, professional boundaries that existed for good reasons. If anyone found out, the gossip alone could be devastating. He could be seen as trying to sleep his way to a promotion. She could be seen as abusing her power. Both of their reputations would be on the line. But when he looked at her, at the genuine hope and nervousness in her expression, all the logical arguments seemed to lose their weight. Okay, he heard himself say. Dinner. Somewhere private. The smile that crossed Lauren's face was like sunrise breaking through clouds, sudden, brilliant, transforming her entire expression. Yeah? Yeah, Daniel confirmed, feeling a matching smile tug at his own lips. But I need to be up front. I can't do weeknights. I have Emma, and her schedule is non-negotiable. What about weekend afternoons? I could do lunch on Sunday. There's a place in Carmel, about an hour south. Small, quiet, excellent food. We'd be unlikely to run into anyone from work. Carmel, Daniel repeated, his mind already calculating logistics. I'd need to arrange childcare, but yes, I can make that work. Good. Lauren pulled out her phone. Give me your number. I'll text you the details. They exchanged information like teenagers passing notes in class, both of them hyper-aware of how surreal the moment was. When Daniel's phone buzzed with her text, just a simple, "It's Lauren," he felt something shift in his chest. A door opening that he'd thought was permanently closed. "I should probably go back in," Lauren said, though she made no move to leave. "I've been out here long enough that people will notice." "Right." Daniel pocketed his phone. "And I should probably actually eat some of those hors d'oeuvres before I have to drive home." They walked back toward the tent together but separated before entering, an unspoken agreement to maintain distance now that they'd crossed an invisible line. Inside, the reception was in full swing. The wedding party had arrived, toasts were being made, and dinner would presumably be served soon. Daniel found an empty seat at a table near the back and tried to act normal, but his mind was reeling. He'd just agreed to have lunch with Lauren Cross, the CEO, the woman who was so far out of his league that the concept of league seemed laughable. What was he thinking? Across the tent, he caught sight of her at a table near the front, engaged in conversation with what looked like board members. She laughed at something one of them said, and Daniel realized he'd never actually heard her laugh before this afternoon. It was a good sound, warm and genuine. She glanced his way, just for a second, and the connection they'd felt on the terrace sparked across the crowded space. Then she turned back to her conversation, and the moment passed. Daniel picked at his dinner when it arrived, his appetite gone but his mind racing. He stayed through the toasts and the first dance, stayed long enough to congratulate Marcus properly and meet his new wife Stephanie, stayed long enough to avoid being rude. But as soon as it was reasonable to leave, he made his excuses and headed for his car. The drive home felt both too long and too short. He needed time to process what had just happened, but he also needed to see Emma, to ground himself in the reality of his life. The choices he made didn't just affect him anymore. They affected a 6-year-old girl who trusted him to be consistent, stable, present. Mrs. Patterson was dozing on the couch when he arrived, the television playing some home renovation show on low volume. She startled awake as he closed the door. "Oh, you're back." She glanced at the clock. "That was quicker than I expected. How was the wedding?" "It was nice," Daniel said, which was both true and wildly insufficient. "Emma okay?" "Perfect, Angel, as always. We had mac and cheese for dinner, read 3 stories, and she's been asleep for about an hour." Mrs. Patterson gathered her knitting. "You look tired, dear. Everything all right?" "Just a long day," Daniel said, helping her to the door. "Thank you for watching her. I really appreciate it." After Mrs. Patterson left, Daniel climbed the stairs to Emma's room. She was sprawled across her twin bed, clutches her favorite stuffed rabbit, her dark hair fanned across the pillow. She looked so small, so vulnerable. The weight of responsibility settled over him like a familiar coat. He stood there for a long moment, just watching her sleep, reminding himself why every decision he made had to be careful and considered. Then he went to his own room, changed into sleep clothes, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. His phone sat on the nightstand, Lauren's contact information now saved in his address book. He could text her, could say he'd reconsidered, that this was too complicated. She would understand. They could pretend this afternoon had never happened, go back to being CEO and employee with nothing more between them than professional courtesy. But he didn't reach for the phone. Instead, he lay there thinking about the way Lauren had looked at him on the terrace, about the vulnerability beneath her polished exterior, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, something real could exist in the messy space between should and shouldn't. Tomorrow, he would wake up and make Emma pancakes. They would go to the park, and she would demand to be pushed on the swings until his arms ached. They would come home and watch a movie, and she would fall asleep on the couch halfway through. It would be normal and routine and safe. But underneath that normal, something had shifted. A door had opened, and Daniel wasn't entirely sure he wanted to close it. The text arrived Thursday morning while Daniel was in the middle of a campaign review meeting. Sunday, 12:30, the Cypress Room in Carmel. I'll send you the address. Looking forward to it. He stared at the message for longer than was probably appropriate, his coffee growing cold in his hand. Across the conference table, Marcus was presenting quarterly metrics, his voice animated as he clicked through slides showing engagement rates and conversion data. Daniel forced himself to focus, to nod in the right places, to jot down notes that he'd probably never reference again. But his mind kept circling back to those 3 sentences, looking forward to it. Simple words that carried the weight of everything unsaid. When the meeting ended, Jessica caught up with him in the hallway. "You've been distracted all week," she said, falling into step beside him. "Everything okay with Emma?" "Emma's fine," Daniel said quickly. Too quickly, he realized, when Jessica's eyebrows rose. "Okay, so not Emma, which means it's either work stress or—" She paused, her expression shifting to something more knowing. "Oh, oh, you met someone at the wedding." Daniel felt heat crawl up his neck. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please, I've known you for 2 years, Daniel. You're terrible at hiding things." Jessica lowered her voice as they passed a cluster of developers. "Who is she? Please tell me it's not someone from work, because that's just asking for complications." The irony was so sharp Daniel almost laughed. "Can we not do this here?" "Fine, but you're buying me coffee tomorrow and telling me everything." Jessica squeezed his arm. "I'm happy for you, though. You deserve something good." After she left, Daniel stood in the empty hallway, her words echoing in his mind. You deserve something good. Did he? And even if he did, was Lauren Cross the something good he should be reaching for? Or was she the kind of beautiful mistake that would upend everything he'd carefully built? That evening, after Emma was asleep, Daniel sat at his laptop researching the Cypress Room. The website showed an intimate space with exposed brick walls, soft lighting, and a menu that made his modest salary feel inadequate. This wasn't the kind of place you went for casual lunch. This was the kind of place where conversations happened that mattered. He closed the laptop and paced his small living room, second-guessing everything. He should cancel. Text Lauren and tell her he'd reconsidered, that the risk was too high, that they should just forget the whole thing. His fingers hovered over his phone 3 separate times that night, but he never quite managed to type the message. Saturday arrived with Emma demanding they make cookies. She stood on a step stool at the counter, her small hands covered in flour as she attempted to shape the dough into what she insisted were dinosaurs, but looked more like abstract blobs. "Daddy, do you have a girlfriend?" she asked suddenly, her attention still focused on the dough. Daniel nearly dropped the mixing bowl. "What? No. Why would you ask that?" "Because you keep smiling at your phone. That's what happens in movies when people have girlfriends." Emma looked up at him with those too perceptive eyes that sometimes made him forget she was only 6. "Are you going to get married and leave me?" The fear in her voice broke something in his chest. He crouched down so they were eye level. "Emma, listen to me. I am never going to leave you. Never. You're the most important person in my entire world, and that's never going to change, okay? But what if you meet someone and they don't like me?" "Then I wouldn't be with them," Daniel said firmly. "Anyone who's part of my life has to love you. That's the rule. Non-negotiable." Emma seemed to consider this, then nodded and went back to her dinosaur cookies. But the conversation stayed with Daniel long after the cookies were baked and eaten, long after Emma was tucked into bed with her rabbit and her nightlight casting soft shadows on the walls. He was 30 years old. Was he really prepared to stay single forever for the sake of simplicity? To never explore connection because it might get complicated? Emma deserved a father who was present and stable, yes. But she also deserved a father who showed her what it looked like to be brave, to take thoughtful risks, to believe that good things were possible even when they were scary. Sunday morning arrived too quickly and too slowly. Daniel changed his shirt 3 times, finally settling on dark jeans and a button-down that Emma declared made him look fancy but not too fancy. He'd arranged for Mrs. Patterson to watch Emma for the afternoon, telling her he had a business lunch, which was technically true even if it felt like a lie. The drive to Carmel took exactly an hour and 12 minutes. Daniel spent most of it practicing conversations in his head, imagining everything that could go right and everything that could go catastrophically wrong. By the time he pulled into the parking lot behind the Cypress Room, his hands were sweating despite the cool November air. Lauren was already there, seated at a corner table that offered privacy from the other diners. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. It was the most casual Daniel had ever seen her, and somehow that made everything feel more real. This wasn't CEO Lauren Cross in her armor of expensive suits and professional distance. This was just Lauren, looking as nervous as he felt. She stood as he approached, and for an awkward moment, they both seemed unsure whether to hug or shake hands or just sit down. They settled on an uncomfortable half-wave before taking their seats. "You found it okay?" Lauren asked. "GPS did most of the work," Daniel said, grateful for the mundane topic to ease into conversation. "This place is beautiful. I've never been to Carmel before. I come here sometimes when I need to think. There's something about being near the water that helps me process things." She paused as the server appeared with menus and water glasses. After they'd ordered, a pasta dish for Daniel, salmon for Lauren, the silence stretched between them. "This is weird, isn't it?" Lauren said finally, a small smile playing at her lips. "We've worked in the same building for 2.5 years, and suddenly we're sitting here like teenagers on a first date." "Is that what this is?" Daniel asked. "A first date? I don't know what else to call it." Lauren took a sip of water. "Though I'll admit, I'm out of practice. My last actual date was, God, probably 4 years ago? Some setup my sister arranged with a friend of her husband's. We had nothing in common, and I spent the entire dinner checking my phone for work emails." "That bad?" "Worse. He spent 20 minutes explaining cryptocurrency to me like I was a child, despite the fact that I run a tech company." She laughed. "What about you? When was your last date?" Daniel had to think about it. "About a year after Emma's mother left. A woman I met at the park. Another single parent. We went to dinner, and I spent the whole time comparing her to Emma's mom and panicking about whether I was ready for this. There was no second date." "So we're both disasters at this," Lauren said. "Apparently." The acknowledgement seemed to relax something between them. Their food arrived, and conversation began to flow more naturally. Lauren asked about Emma, and Daniel found himself telling stories he hadn't shared with anyone, about the time Emma decided to give herself a haircut the night before picture day, about her obsession with dinosaurs, and her insistence that she was going to be a paleontologist when she grew up. "She sounds amazing," Lauren said, genuine warmth in her voice. "She is. Exhausting and amazing in equal measure." Daniel paused. "She asked me yesterday if I had a girlfriend, if I was going to get married and leave her." Lauren's expression softened. "What did you tell her?" "That she's the most important person in my world, that anyone who's part of my life has to love her, that I'm never leaving her." He met Lauren's eyes. "I meant all of it." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Lauren said quietly. "And for what it's worth, I think that's exactly what you should have told her." They talked about work, carefully skirting around the complications of their respective positions. Lauren shared her frustration with a board member who kept pushing for aggressive expansion when she believed in sustainable growth. Daniel told her about a campaign that had flopped spectacularly because no one had bothered to actually talk to customers about what they wanted. "That's the thing no one tells you about being CEO," Lauren said. "Everyone assumes you have all the answers, that you're supremely confident in every decision. But most of the time I'm just making educated guesses and hoping I'm not screwing everything up." "You hide it well," Daniel said. "From the outside, you seem completely in control." "That's the performance. The armor I put on every morning so people will trust that I know what I'm doing." She pushed her salmon around her plate. "But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to just not have to perform, to be with someone who saw past all that." The vulnerability in her voice made Daniel's chest ache. "Is that what you think might happen here, between us?" "I don't know," Lauren admitted, "but I'd like to find out. If you're willing to navigate the complications." "The complications being that you're the CEO and I'm an employee. Among other things." Lauren set down her fork. "We should talk about that. Really talk about it. Because if we're going to do this, we need to be smart about it." Daniel appreciated the directness. It was one of the things he'd noticed about her at the wedding. She didn't dance around difficult topics. "Okay, so let's talk about it. First, disclosure. If this becomes a relationship, we'll need to inform HR and the board. It's policy." Lauren's tone was businesslike, but Daniel could hear the tension underneath. "That means people will know. There will be gossip. Some people will assume you're getting preferential treatment. Others will assume I'm abusing my power. Even though neither of those things would be true. Truth doesn't always matter when it comes to perception." Lauren leaned back in her chair. "I need you to understand what you'd be signing up for. The scrutiny, the whispers, the way some people will never see you as anything but the guy who's sleeping with the CEO." Daniel absorbed this, turning it over in his mind. He'd spent his entire professional life trying to be taken seriously, to prove his worth through his work. The idea of having all that undermined by office gossip made his stomach turn. But then he looked at Lauren, at the careful hope in her expression, and something in him settled. "I've spent 3 years being defined by being a single father," he said slowly. "People make assumptions about me all the time, that I'm not committed because I leave at 5:15, that I'm playing the sympathy card when I talk about Emma, that I'm less ambitious because I chose family over climbing the ladder. I've learned to not let other people's perceptions define my reality. That's not the same thing as everyone at work talking about your personal life." "No, it's not," Daniel agreed. "But here's the thing. I've already decided that some things matter more than what other people think. Emma matters more. My integrity matters more. And if this," he gestured between them, "turns into something real, that would matter more too." Lauren was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the condensation on her water glass. "You say that now. But what happens when you're passed over for a promotion because people assume it would look like favoritism? Or when someone makes a snide comment in a meeting about how you're succeeding because of who you're dating?" "Then I deal with it," Daniel said. "The same way I deal with people assuming I'm less dedicated because I'm a parent, by doing excellent work and letting the results speak for themselves." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's also not impossible." He paused. "Unless you're trying to talk me out of this." "No," Lauren said quickly. "No, I want you to go into this with eyes open. I've seen what workplace relationships can do to careers, especially when there's a power imbalance. I don't want you to wake up 6 months from now resenting me because people treat you differently." Daniel reached across the table, stopping just short of taking her hand. The gesture hung in the air between them. "Can I be honest about something? Please." "I'm terrified," Daniel said. "Of all of it. The gossip, the complications, the way this could blow up if we're not careful. But I'm more terrified of walking away from something that might be important because I was too afraid to try." Lauren's eyes searched his face. "When did you get so brave?" "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of letting fear make all my decisions." He finally closed the distance, his fingers brushing against hers. "What do you want, Lauren? Not what's smart or strategic or politically safe. What do you actually want?" She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. The touch was electric, a current running between them. "I want to see where this goes. I want to have more afternoons like this, where I'm not the CEO and you're not an employee, and we're just two people getting to know each other. I want—" She paused, then pushed forward. "I want to stop being so damn lonely." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Daniel squeezed her hand. "Yeah, me too." They sat like that for a moment, hands linked across the table, the conversation flowing around them fading to background noise. Then Lauren's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. "Board member, I should probably—" She pulled her hand back reluctantly. "Answer it," Daniel said. "I get it." While Lauren stepped outside to take the call, Daniel sat alone at the table, processing everything that had just happened. They'd crossed a line. Multiple lines, actually. And there was no going back to pretending this connection didn't exist. The check arrived, and Daniel reached for his wallet, but Lauren returned before he could flag down the server. "Already taken care of," she said. "I invited you, so it's on me." "Lauren, don't," she said gently. "I know chivalry or whatever, but I make significantly more money than you do, and I'm not going to make this weird by pretending I don't." She paused. "Though, for the record, I appreciate the impulse." They walked out together, the afternoon sun bright after the dimness of the restaurant. The parking lot was quiet, just a few cars scattered across the spaces. Lauren's car, a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than Daniel made in a year, was parked near his modest Honda. "So," Lauren said, stopping beside his car, "where do we go from here?" "I'd like to see you again," Daniel said, "if that's what you want, too." "It is," she smiled. "Though our schedules aren't exactly compatible, you have Emma most weekends and I'm usually buried in work during the week." "We'll figure it out," Daniel said. "Maybe Sunday afternoons become our thing, or we could try weeknight dinners after Emma's asleep, if you don't mind coming to my side of town." "I don't mind at all." Lauren hesitated, then stepped closer. Can I hug you? Is that weird? Not weird, Daniel said, pulling her into his arms. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, her arms wrapped around his waist. She smelled like that subtle perfume he remembered from the wedding, and underneath it, something that was just her. They stood like that for longer than was probably appropriate in a public parking lot, neither of them quite ready to let go. I should get back, Daniel said finally, reluctantly. Emma will want to tell me everything she did this afternoon in excruciating detail. And I have emails to catch up on, Lauren said, stepping back. The glamorous life of a CEO. They stood there for another moment, neither quite ready to leave. Finally, Lauren rose on her toes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. Text me when you get home? Let me know you made it safe. You too, Daniel said, his skin still tingling where her lips had touched. He watched her drive away, then sat in his car for a long moment before starting the engine. The drive home passed in a blur, his mind replaying the afternoon, cataloging every moment, every word, every touch. Emma was waiting on the front porch when he arrived, Mrs. Patterson standing behind her with an indulgent smile. Daddy, we made friendship bracelets, and I saved you one. Emma thrust a tangle of colorful string at him. This is beautiful, Daniel said, crouching down to let her tie it around his wrist. Thank you, Bug, after Mrs. Patterson left, and Emma was settled with her coloring books. Daniel sent Lauren a text. Made it home. Emma says the friendship bracelet I'm now wearing is the most fashionable thing I own. The response came quickly. She's probably right. Made it back to my place. The silence is deafening after an afternoon of actual human interaction. They texted back and forth while Daniel made dinner, while Emma chattered about her day, while the evening settled into its familiar routine. It felt natural, comfortable, like Lauren was already part of the fabric of his life rather than this new, uncertain thing. Monday morning at the office felt surreal. Daniel walked through the lobby, past the reception desk, up to the marketing floor, and everything looked exactly the same. But he felt different, like he was carrying a secret that showed on his face. So, Jessica cornered him at the coffee machine before he'd even made it to his desk. The wedding connection. Are you going to tell me about her, or do I have to guess? Daniel poured his coffee slowly, buying time. We went to lunch yesterday. It was nice. Nice? Jessica's eyes narrowed. You're being weirdly cagey about this, which makes me think either it went terribly or it went very well. And since you don't look heartbroken, I'm going with very well. Jessica. Is she someone I know? Someone from work? Jessica gasped. Oh my God, it's someone from work. Daniel, please tell me you're not dating someone in the department because that's just asking for... She's not in marketing, Daniel interrupted. Then, realizing he'd basically confirmed Jessica's theory, he sighed. Can we please not have this conversation here? Jessica studied his face, and Daniel watched as understanding dawned. Her eyes went wide. No, you did not. Jessica, the CEO? You're dating the CEO. Jessica's voice had gone up an octave, and Daniel quickly looked around to make sure no one was listening. Keep your voice down, and it's not, he struggled to find the right words. We've had one lunch, that's all. We're getting to know each other. Daniel? Jessica grabbed his arm, her expression torn between horror and fascination. Do you understand how insane this is? Lauren Cross doesn't date. She definitely doesn't date employees. This is complicated. I know, trust me, I know. Daniel pulled his arm free gently. Which is why I need you to not say anything to anyone. Please, Jess. If this becomes office gossip before we've even figured out what it is... Jessica took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay, I won't say anything. But Daniel, you need to be careful, really careful. This kind of thing can blow up in ways you're not prepared for. I know, Daniel said quietly, but I'm going to try anyway. The week proceeded normally on the surface. Daniel attended meetings, worked on campaigns, picked Emma up from school at the same time every day. But underneath the routine, something had shifted. He and Lauren texted throughout the day. Nothing inappropriate. Nothing that would cause problems if someone saw his phone, but a steady stream of connection. Small observations, funny moments, the kind of mundane details people share when they're building intimacy. On Wednesday, Lauren texted, "Board meeting from hell. Currently listening to a 40-minute presentation about market penetration strategies that could have been a 2-sentence email. Send help or coffee." Daniel smiled at his desk. Pretty sure sending the CEO coffee during a board meeting would violate some kind of protocol, but I'm thinking about you suffering through PowerPoint slides, if that helps. It does, actually. Thursday evening, after Emma was asleep, Daniel's phone rang. Lauren's name on the screen made his heart skip. "Hey," he answered, his voice low, even though Emma was upstairs and definitely asleep. "Hey yourself." Lauren sounded tired. "Is this a bad time?" "No, it's perfect. Just finished putting Emma to bed." Daniel settled onto his couch. "Long day?" "Endless day. I had 3 meetings that should have been emails and 1 crisis that actually required attention. I'm sitting in my apartment drinking wine and wondering why I thought running a company was a good idea." "Because you're brilliant at it?" Daniel offered. Lauren laughed, a warm sound that made him wish they were in the same room. "Flattery will get you everywhere. What about you? How was your day?" They talked for over an hour, conversation flowing easily from work frustrations to Emma's latest dinosaur obsession, to a debate about whether superhero movies had gotten better or worse in recent years. It was comfortable and easy, the kind of conversation that made Daniel forget about the complications and just enjoy being with someone who got him. "I miss you," Lauren said suddenly, then seemed to catch herself. "Is it weird to say that? We've had 1 lunch and I already miss you." "Not weird," Daniel assured her. "I miss you too. I want to see you again, soon." There was a vulnerability in her voice that made his chest ache. "Would you be willing to come to my place for dinner, maybe Saturday evening? I could cook, or we could order in, and we could just spend time together without feeling like we're on display." Daniel thought about logistics. "I'd need to arrange childcare for Emma. Mrs. Patterson might be willing to stay late, or I could see if Jessica—" "Bring her," Lauren interrupted. "What?" "Bring Emma. If she's the most important person in your world, I should meet her. Not as, I don't know, not as anything official, just as someone her dad is spending time with. Would that be okay?" Daniel felt something warm unfurl in his chest. "You want to meet my daughter?" "I want to meet the person who made you who you are. And I want her to see that I'm not some scary stranger trying to take her dad away." Lauren paused. "Unless you think it's too soon. I don't want to overstep." "No," Daniel said quickly. "No, I think she should meet you, but fair warning, she's going to ask you a million questions about dinosaurs and whether you've ever seen a real triceratops." "I'll prepare accordingly," Lauren said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. They made plans for Saturday evening, and after they hung up, Daniel sat in the darkness of his living room feeling the weight of what they were doing. Introducing Lauren to Emma meant this was real. It meant he was serious about seeing where this could go. It meant risking not just his own heart, but his daughter's too. But it also meant hope. It meant believing that good things were possible. It meant choosing to be brave. Saturday arrived with Emma in a mood. She didn't want to wear the dress Daniel suggested, didn't want to eat breakfast, didn't want to do anything except watch television and complain about being bored. "We're having dinner at a friend's house tonight," Daniel told her over lunch, "so I need you to be on your best behavior." "What friend?" Emma asked suspiciously. "Is it Uncle Marcus because his new wife talks too much?" "Not Uncle Marcus, a friend from work. Her name is Lauren." Emma's eyes narrowed. "Is she your girlfriend?" Here it was, the moment of truth. Daniel chose his words carefully. "She's someone I like spending time with. Someone I'd like you to meet. Can you give her a chance?" "I guess," Emma said, but she didn't sound convinced. They arrived at Lauren's apartment building at 6 o'clock. It was in a nicer part of the city, all glass and modern architecture, with a doorman who called up to confirm their arrival. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt interminable, with Emma fidgeting beside him and asking increasingly random questions about Lauren. "Does she like dinosaurs? Does she have any pets? Is she taller than you? Why does she live so high up? What if there's a fire?" "Emma, breathe," Daniel said, realizing his daughter was as nervous as he was. Lauren answered the door in jeans and a casual sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, softer than she did at work. Hi, she said, smiling at both of them. You must be Emma. Your dad's told me so much about you. Emma hid partly behind Daniel's leg, suddenly shy. He told me about you too, but not that much. Lauren laughed. Well, come in and I'll fill in the gaps. I hope you like pasta, because I made approximately enough to feed a small army. The apartment was beautiful. High ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked expensive but comfortable. But what caught Daniel's attention was the coffee table, where Lauren had laid out coloring books and a set of markers. I wasn't sure what 6-year-olds liked, Lauren said, following his gaze, so I may have gone overboard at the bookstore. There's also a dinosaur documentary queued up on the TV if you want to watch it later. Emma's eyes went wide. You like dinosaurs? I don't know much about them, Lauren admitted, but I'd love to learn. Maybe you could teach me. And just like that, Emma was won over. She spent the next 20 minutes explaining the difference between herbivores and carnivores while Lauren listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was actually paying attention. Daniel watched them together, something in his chest expanding. Dinner was easy and relaxed. Lauren had made a simple pasta with garlic bread, and Emma declared it even better than the restaurant kind. They ate at the dining table, Emma chattering about school and her best friend Mia and the science project she wanted to do about T-Rexes. After dinner, while Emma was absorbed in the documentary, Lauren and Daniel cleaned up the kitchen together. They moved around each other easily, falling into a rhythm of washing and drying, their shoulders brushing occasionally. She's wonderful, Lauren said quietly. You've done an amazing job with her. She likes you, Daniel said, which is, I wasn't sure how this would go, but she really likes you. The feeling's mutual. Lauren dried her hands on a towel, then turned to face him. They were close in the small kitchen, close enough that Daniel could count the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Thank you for sharing her with me. I know that's not a small thing. Thank you for wanting to meet her, for not running away screaming at the idea of dating someone with a kid. Why would I run? Lauren's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. She's part of you, the best part, probably. Daniel wanted to kiss her. The urge was so strong it was almost physical. But Emma was just in the other room, and this was all still so new, and he didn't want to rush or complicate or risk messing up what was building between them. Lauren seemed to read his mind. Soon, she whispered. But maybe not with a 6-year-old documentary critic in the next room. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, Emma between them, watching dinosaurs roam across prehistoric landscapes while Lauren asked questions, and Emma explained everything with the confidence of a tiny expert. Daniel felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years, this sense that maybe all the pieces of his life could fit together after all. When Emma started yawning around 8:30, Daniel knew it was time to go. Emma hugged Lauren goodbye without prompting, which was rare for his usually reserved daughter. Can we come back? Emma asked as they waited for the elevator. I didn't get to finish teaching her about pterodactyls. We'll see, Daniel said, but he was smiling. That night, after Emma was asleep, his phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. She's perfect. You're perfect. This whole evening was perfect. I can't stop smiling. Daniel wrote back. Same. She asked if we could come back. I think you made a fan. Good, because I'd really like to do this again. And again. And as many times as you'll let me. Lying in bed, Daniel stared at those words and felt the last of his resistance crumble. This was real. This was happening. And for the first time in 3 years, he was ready to let someone in. The whispers started on a Tuesday. Daniel was refilling his coffee in the break room when he caught the tail end of a conversation between 2 junior marketing associates. They went quiet the moment they saw him, offering tight smiles before hurrying out. He thought nothing of it at first. People had private conversations. It wasn't always about him. But then it happened again at lunch. He walked into the cafeteria, and a cluster of product managers fell silent, their eyes tracking him as he moved through the food line. When he sat down at his usual table, Marcus slid into the seat across from him with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. We need to talk, Marcus said quietly. Daniel's stomach dropped. About what? About the fact that apparently you're dating Lauren Cross and didn't think to mention it to your best friend. Marcus's tone wasn't angry exactly, but there was hurt underneath it. I had to hear about it from Stephanie, who heard it from someone in accounting, who heard it from someone in HR. The coffee turned to acid in Daniel's stomach. How does HR know? Because someone saw you two having dinner together last week. And then someone else saw your car in her building's parking garage on Saturday night. And now everyone's putting together pieces and coming up with a story. Marcus leaned forward. Is it true? Daniel set down his fork, his appetite gone. We've been seeing each other, yes. Jesus, Daniel. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. The CEO. You're dating the CEO? It's not like I planned it, Daniel said defensively. It just happened. At your wedding, actually. We started talking and… At my wedding? Marcus looked stunned. That was over a month ago. You've been keeping this secret for over a month? We were trying to be careful, to figure out what it was before we told anyone. Daniel glanced around, but other people were definitely watching them now. Clearly, we weren't careful enough. Careful? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Daniel, there's no version of this that ends well. She's the CEO. You're a mid-level employee. People are going to assume you're getting special treatment, that you're using her to advance your career. That's not what this is. I believe you, but that doesn't matter. Perception is reality in places like this. Marcus's voice softened. Look, I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm worried about you. This kind of thing can destroy careers, especially yours since you're the one without the power in the relationship. Before Daniel could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. My office, now, please. He showed Marcus the screen. I have to go. Be careful, Marcus said. Whatever's happening, just be careful. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt like ascending to an execution. Daniel's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had someone complained to HR? Had the board found out? Was Lauren about to end things before they'd barely begun to protect her position? Her assistant waved him through without comment, and Daniel knocked once before entering Lauren's office. She was standing by the window, her back to the door, her posture rigid. Close the door, she said without turning around. Daniel did, then waited. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Lauren turned to face him. She looked tired. The careful composure she usually wore cracked around the edges. HR received an anonymous complaint this morning about us, about potential favoritism and abuse of power. I haven't received any special treatment, Daniel said immediately. My assignments haven't changed. My performance reviews have been the same as always. I know that. You know that. But the perception is there, and that's enough to cause problems. Lauren crossed her arms. The board is concerned. They're talking about conflicts of interest, about the optics of the CEO dating an employee. They want me to either end the relationship or reassign you to a different reporting structure. Daniel felt like he'd been punched. Reassign me where? Operations, different division, different management chain, no direct connection to my authority. Lauren's voice was carefully neutral, but he could hear the tension underneath. It would eliminate the power dynamic issue. On paper, at least. But it would look like I got demoted because we're dating. Or like you got a lateral move to avoid conflicts of interest. Lauren moved away from the window, closer to him. Daniel, I don't want to do this, any of this, but we knew this was a possibility. Possibility is different from reality, Daniel said. We've been careful. We haven't done anything inappropriate at work. I haven't asked you for anything, haven't leveraged this relationship for professional gain. I know. Lauren's facade cracked slightly. But someone noticed anyway. Someone who thought it was worth reporting. And now we have to deal with the consequences. Who? Daniel demanded. Who reported us? Anonymous means anonymous. HR won't say, even if they know. Lauren sat on the edge of her desk, suddenly looking exhausted. Does it matter? Someone saw us together, someone put the pieces together, this was always going to happen eventually. Daniel paced the length of her office, trying to organize his thoughts. So, what do we do? Take the reassignment and hope people don't talk? That doesn't solve the actual problem. People will still gossip. They'll still assume things. The reassignment is about limiting liability. It means if anyone questions your future promotions or assignments, there's a clear separation between my authority and your career trajectory. Lauren rubbed her temples. It's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative. which is, we end this right now, before it gets more complicated. Lauren met his eyes, and Daniel saw the fear there beneath her professional mask. Before one or both of us gets hurt in ways we can't recover from. The words hung in the air between them. Daniel felt his heart hammering against his ribs. This was the moment. The crossroads. They could walk away now, go back to being CEO, an employee with nothing between them but professional courtesy. It would be safer, simpler. It would protect both their careers, but it would also mean giving up something that felt important, something that might actually be real. Is that what you want? Daniel asked quietly. To end this? Lauren was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. No, but what I want isn't the only thing that matters here. Then what does matter? Your career, your reputation. Emma. Lauren stood, moving closer to him. Daniel, I've been thinking about this all morning, about what happens if we keep going down this road. The best case scenario is that people gossip for a few months and then move on. The worst case scenario is that your career is permanently damaged because people will always question whether you earned your successes or whether you slept your way into them. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's reality. Lauren's hands clenched at her sides. I have power here. I'm insulated by my position. But you? You're vulnerable in ways I'm not. And the thought of being the reason you get hurt. Stop trying to protect me, Daniel interrupted. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions about what risks are worth taking. Can you? Lauren's voice sharpened. Because from where I'm standing, you have a 6-year-old daughter who depends on you. What happens if this blows up so badly that you lose your job? How do you explain to Emma that Daddy can't afford the house anymore because he was dating someone he shouldn't have been? The words hit like a slap. Daniel took a step back. You think I haven't thought about that? You think I haven't spent every night since we started this lying awake worrying about exactly that scenario? Then why are we still doing this? Lauren's voice broke slightly. Why are we risking everything for something that might not even work out? Because it might work out, Daniel said. Because for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I'm not just surviving. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it's like to be more than just Emma's dad or a marketing strategist or any of the other roles I play. I'm just me. And you see me. The real me. Lauren's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I see you, and that's exactly why I'm scared. Because if this goes wrong, I won't be the only one who gets hurt. They stood there in the middle of her office, the city sprawling below through the floor-to-ceiling windows, both of them caught between what they wanted and what felt safe. Finally, Daniel spoke. Take the reassignment. Move me to operations. We'll deal with whatever gossip comes from that. But don't end this, not yet. Not unless you genuinely want to. I don't want to, Lauren admitted, but I don't know if what I want matters more than the damage we might do. It matters to me, Daniel said. What you want matters to me. Lauren closed the distance between them, her hand finding his. We'd have to tell HR officially, file the disclosure paperwork, make it all official and on the record. Okay. People will know, not just suspect, but actually know. I understand. Your life is going to get complicated in ways you can't anticipate. Lauren, Daniel squeezed her hand. I'm already in. I've been in since that first lunch in Carmel. Since you met Emma and spent an hour learning about dinosaurs because it mattered to her. This is happening whether we file paperwork or not, so we might as well do it right. A knock on the door made them spring apart like guilty teenagers. Lauren called out, Yes? Her assistant's voice came through the door. Ms. Cross, you have the executive committee meeting in 5 minutes. Thank you, Diane. I'll be right there. Lauren looked at Daniel, something shifting in her expression. I need to go, but we should talk tonight, really talk, about what happens next. Come to my place, Daniel said. After Emma's asleep. We'll figure this out together. Lauren nodded, then did something that surprised him. She rose on her toes and kissed him quickly, a soft press of lips that tasted like coffee and fear and hope all mixed together. I'll see you tonight. Daniel left her office with his heart racing and his mind spinning. The elevator ride down felt surreal. Everything had changed in the span of 30 minutes. Their relationship was about to become public knowledge. His career was about to take a turn he hadn't planned for. The whispers were about to become full conversations. When he got back to his desk, Jessica was waiting. She took one look at his face and pulled him into an empty conference room. "What happened?" she demanded. Daniel told her everything, the HR complaint, the reassignment, the conversation with Lauren. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "Operations," she said when he finished. "That's actually not a terrible move, career-wise. Tim Breslin runs that division, and he's good people. Fair, results-oriented, doesn't play politics." "You think I should take it?" "I think you don't have much choice if you want to keep seeing Lauren." Jessica studied him. "Are you sure about this, Daniel? Really sure? Because once you file that disclosure paperwork, there's no taking it back. Everyone will know. And some people are going to be vicious about it." "I know." Daniel leaned against the conference table. "But what's the alternative? Walk away from something that might actually be good because I'm afraid of what people might say?" When you put it like that, it sounds noble. But Daniel, you have more to lose than most people. You have Emma to think about. "I am thinking about Emma," Daniel said. "I'm thinking about what kind of example I want to set for her. Do I want to teach her to always play it safe, to never take risks because someone might judge her? Or do I want to show her that sometimes the things worth having are the things you have to fight for?" Jessica sighed. "You really care about her. Lauren, I mean. This isn't just some fling." "No," Daniel said quietly. "It's not." "Then I've got your back. Whatever happens, whatever people say, you've got at least one person in your corner." Jessica hugged him quickly. "Though I reserve the right to say, 'I told you so,' if this all goes sideways." Fair enough. The rest of the day was a blur of meetings and pointed looks from colleagues who'd clearly heard the rumors. Daniel kept his head down and focused on work, but he could feel the weight of attention, the speculation happening in conversations he wasn't part of. By the time 5:15 arrived, he was desperate to escape. Emma was unusually quiet on the drive home. Daniel glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Everything okay, Bug?" "Mia's mom asked me about Lauren today," Emma said. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did she ask?" "If she was your girlfriend." "I said I didn't know." Emma's voice was small. "Is she? Your girlfriend?" This was the conversation Daniel had been dreading. He pulled into their driveway and turned to face his daughter. "Would it bother you if she was?" Emma considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. "I like her. She's nice. And she cares about dinosaurs." "She cares about dinosaurs because you care about dinosaurs," Daniel said gently. "But yes, I like her a lot. We're spending time together to see if we want to be more than just friends." "Like boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Something like that." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Are you going to marry her?" "Whoa, slow down. We're nowhere near that. We're just getting to know each other right now." Daniel reached back to squeeze Emma's hand. "But I want you to know that whatever happens with Lauren, you're still the most important person in my life. That never changes. Okay?" "Okay." Emma unbuckled her seatbelt. "Can we have mac and cheese for dinner?" The shift in topic gave Daniel whiplash, but he was grateful for it. "Mac and cheese it is." They settled into their evening routine, but Daniel's mind was elsewhere. Lauren was coming over tonight. They needed to make decisions about the disclosure, about the reassignment, about how to handle the gossip that was already spreading through the office. Part of him wanted to protect Emma from all of it, to keep this separate from his home life. But another part knew that wasn't possible. If this relationship with Lauren continued, it would affect Emma too. After dinner and bath time and 3 stories and Emma's increasingly creative attempts to delay bedtime, Daniel finally got his daughter settled. He was cleaning up the kitchen when the doorbell rang at 9:30. Lauren stood on his front porch in jeans and a sweater, holding a bottle of wine and looking nervous. "Hi." "Hi." Daniel stepped aside to let her in. "Emma's asleep. We can talk freely." They settled on the couch with glasses of wine. Neither of them really drank. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Lauren broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being in this, about doing it right." She set her glass down. "I talked to the board this afternoon, told them that I was seeing someone from the company and that we were filing the appropriate disclosure paperwork. that you were accepting a reassignment to eliminate any conflicts of interest. How did they take it? About as well as expected. Lots of concern about optics and liability, but ultimately, if we follow protocol, there's not much they can object to. Lauren turned to face him fully. But Daniel, they also made it very clear that any hint of impropriety, any suggestion that you're receiving favorable treatment, and they'll demand one of us leave the company. They can't fire you. You're the CEO. They can make my life difficult enough that staying becomes untenable. Lauren's voice was steady, but he could see the fear in her eyes. I need you to understand what we're walking into. The scrutiny is going to be intense. Every interaction we have at work will be watched. Every decision I make about marketing or operations will be questioned if it even tangentially benefits you. So we're extra careful. We maintain boundaries at work. We don't send personal emails from company accounts, don't have lunch together in the cafeteria, don't give anyone ammunition. Daniel reached for her hand. We can do that. Can we? Lauren's voice cracked slightly. Can we really maintain that separation when I want to text you during boring meetings, when I want to stop by your desk just to see your face, when something good happens and you're the first person I want to tell? We'll find ways, Daniel said. We'll text from personal phones. We'll save the important conversations for after work. We'll make it work because the alternative is not being together at all. Lauren was quiet for a long moment, studying their joined hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I'm scared, Daniel. I've built my entire career on being unshakable, on making the hard decisions without flinching. But this terrifies me. Because I can't control it, can't strategize my way through it. All I can do is hope that what we have is strong enough to weather whatever comes. It will be, Daniel said with more confidence than he felt. But Lauren, I need you to be honest with me. Is this worth it to you? Am I worth the risk you're taking? Lauren looked up at him, and the vulnerability in her expression made his chest ache. You're the first person in years who's made me feel like I'm more than my job title. Who sees me as Lauren, not as the CEO or the board's problem or the face of the company? When I'm with you, I remember what it's like to just be human. She paused. So yes, you're worth it. Daniel pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. She melted into him, her head resting against his chest, and they sat like that for a long time. No words, just the comfort of physical closeness, the reminder that they weren't facing this alone. The disclosure paperwork goes to HR tomorrow, Lauren said eventually. Once that happens, it becomes official. People will know for certain. Then we face it together, Daniel said. Whatever comes, we face it together. Lauren lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. Kiss me. It wasn't a question, but Daniel treated it like one anyway, giving her time to change her mind. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, closing the distance between them. Their first real kiss was soft and tentative, both of them hyper-aware of how much this moment meant. But as Lauren's hands came up to frame his face, as Daniel deepened the kiss slightly, tentative gave way to certain. This was real. This mattered. This was worth fighting for. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing slightly harder, Lauren laughed. We're really doing this. We're really doing this, Daniel confirmed. They spent the next 2 hours talking through logistics and contingencies, making plans for how to handle the workplace dynamics. Lauren would file the disclosure first thing in the morning. Daniel would meet with HR to discuss the reassignment. They would keep their relationship out of the office as much as possible, maintain clear professional boundaries, and weather whatever gossip came their way. I should go, Lauren said reluctantly as the clock neared midnight. I have an early meeting tomorrow, and you probably need sleep. Probably, Daniel agreed, though he made no move to stand. Thank you for coming, for talking through all of this. Thank you for not running away screaming when I told you about the reassignment. Lauren stood, pulling him up with her. This is going to be hard, Daniel. Harder than we're probably anticipating. I know. Daniel walked her to the door. But hard doesn't mean impossible. Lauren kissed him once more on the doorstep, a long, slow kiss that felt like a promise. Then she was gone, her taillights disappearing down the quiet street. Daniel stood in his doorway for a moment, breathing in the cool night air, processing everything that had happened. Tomorrow, everything would change. The whispers would become conversations. The speculation would become certainty. His career would take a turn he hadn't planned for. But tonight, standing in his doorway with the taste of Lauren still on his lips, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. He was still standing there when Emma's voice came from the stairs. "Daddy? Was that Lauren?" Daniel turned to find his daughter sitting on the bottom step in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Bug, what are you doing awake?" "I heard talking." Emma came down the rest of the stairs. "Was it Lauren?" "Yeah, it was." Daniel sat down beside her. "We needed to talk about some grown-up stuff." Emma leaned against him. "Do you love her?" The question caught Daniel off guard. He thought about lying, about deflecting, about giving some vague non-answer, but Emma deserved better than that. "I think I might," he said honestly. "It's still new, and we're still figuring things out. But, yeah, I think I might." "Good," Emma said simply, "because she makes you smile more. You've been happier since you met her." Out of the mouths of babes, Daniel thought. His 6-year-old daughter had noticed what he'd been trying to rationalize and justify and analyze. Lauren made him happy. It really was that simple underneath all the complications. "Come on, Bug," he said, scooping Emma up. "Let's get you back to bed." As he tucked Emma in for the second time that night, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Daddy, if you marry Lauren, does that mean she'd be my mom?" Daniel's heart clenched. "We're not anywhere near getting married. But if that ever happened someday, she'd be your stepmom. You'd still just have one mom, even though your birth mom isn't around." "I think I'd like that," Emma mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. "Having a mom, even a stepmom." Daniel stood in the doorway long after Emma's breathing evened out into sleep, his mind reeling. He'd been so focused on the workplace complications, on protecting his career and managing the gossip, that he hadn't fully processed what this relationship might mean for Emma. Not just having Lauren around occasionally, but potentially becoming a permanent part of their family. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The next morning arrived too quickly. Daniel got Emma ready for school on autopilot, his mind already at the office, anticipating what the day would bring. When he dropped Emma off, Mia's mother was there, and the knowing look she gave him made his stomach turn. The office felt different the moment he walked in. Conversations stopped as he passed. People stared openly instead of trying to hide their curiosity. By the time he reached his desk, Daniel felt like he was walking through a gauntlet. Jessica appeared at his elbow with coffee. "So it's definitely out there. I've heard at least 5 different versions of the story this morning, ranging from they're secretly engaged to she's pregnant with his baby." "We filed the paperwork this morning," Daniel said quietly, "so at least now people know the truth instead of just speculating." "Oh, honey." Jessica squeezed his arm. "Truth doesn't stop speculation. It just gives people a framework to speculate within." She wasn't wrong. By noon, Daniel had been called into a meeting with HR and Tim Breslin, his new manager in operations. They went over the reassignment details, the reporting structure, the policies about workplace relationships. It was all very professional and very clear about what would happen if either Daniel or Lauren stepped over the line. "For what it's worth," Tim said after the HR rep left, "I don't care who you're dating. I care whether you can do the job. Your work in marketing speaks for itself. If you bring that same level of quality to operations, we'll get along fine." It was more grace than Daniel had expected, and he was grateful for it, but not everyone was so understanding. Over the next few days, Daniel felt the shift in how people treated him. Some colleagues who used to be friendly now kept their distance. Others made pointed comments about advancement opportunities and who you needed to know to get ahead. In meetings, his ideas were scrutinized more harshly, as if people were looking for evidence that he didn't deserve his position. The worst came on Friday, when Daniel overheard 2 senior managers talking outside the men's room. Of course he's getting the operations position. Sleeping with the CEO has its perks. "I heard she pursued him. Some midlife crisis thing. She'll get bored in 6 months and he'll be out on his ass." Daniel stood frozen on the other side of the door, his hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to burst through and defend himself, to set the record straight. But he knew it would only make things worse. So he waited until they left, then splashed cold water on his face and tried to calm the rage burning through his veins. That evening, Lauren came over after Emma was asleep. Daniel had texted her earlier asking if they could talk, and she'd heard something in those words that made her cancel her evening plans. "Tell me," she said the moment he opened the door. Daniel told her about the overheard conversation, about the way people had been treating him, about the constant feeling of being watched and judged. Lauren listened with her jaw clenched, her eyes growing harder with each detail. "Give me their names," she said when he finished. "I'll handle it." "No." Daniel's voice was firm. "That's exactly what we can't do. If you intervene every time someone says something nasty about me, it proves their point, that I need protection, that I can't succeed on my own merit. So you're just supposed to take it? Let people trash you and question your abilities? I'm supposed to do excellent work and let the results speak for themselves," Daniel said. "The same thing I've always done. Eventually people will get bored and move on to the next scandal." Lauren stood and paced his small living room, her frustration evident in every movement. "I hate this. I hate that you're being punished for being with me." "I'm not being punished. I'm dealing with gossip and small-minded people. There's a difference." Daniel caught her hand, pulling her to a stop. "Lauren, this is exactly what we knew would happen. We talked about this." "Talking about it and living through it are different things," Lauren said. "Watching you get hurt because of me, I'm not hurt. I'm annoyed, but I'm not going anywhere." Daniel pulled her closer. "Are you?" "What? Are you going somewhere? Having second thoughts about whether this is worth it?" He kept his voice gentle, but he needed to know. "Because if you are, tell me now. I can handle the gossip. What I can't handle is investing more in this if you're going to walk away the first time things get hard." Lauren's expression softened. She cupped his face in her hands. "I'm not walking away. I'm used to being able to fix things, to solve problems, and I can't fix this. All I can do is watch you deal with the fallout and feel guilty about causing it. You didn't cause it. We both chose this. Together." Daniel kissed her palm. "But we need to be a team. That means you can't swoop in and try to protect me every time someone says something mean. It undermines everything we're trying to prove." "So what do I do? Just stand by and let people question your integrity? You trust me to handle it, and you keep being the brilliant CEO you've always been, making decisions based on what's best for the company, not on what might benefit or protect me." Daniel paused. "Can you do that?" Lauren was quiet for a long moment. "It goes against every instinct I have. But yes, I can do that." They spent the rest of the evening curled up on his couch, finding comfort in each other's presence. The gossip would continue. The scrutiny would intensify. But for these stolen hours, they could just be two people who cared about each other, trying to make something good work despite the obstacles. Around midnight, as Lauren was getting ready to leave, she turned to Daniel one more time. "No matter what happens, no matter how hard this gets, I want you to know that I don't regret it. Any of it." "Neither do I," Daniel said, and meant it. After she left, Daniel stood in his quiet house and thought about everything that had changed in just a few weeks. His career path had shifted. His private life had become public fodder. The comfortable invisibility he'd maintained for years was gone. But he'd also found something he'd stopped believing was possible: connection, partnership, the possibility of building something with someone who saw him for who he really was. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be more whispers, more judgment, more moments when the pressure felt unbearable. But standing there in his living room, thinking about Lauren's smile and Emma's acceptance, and the life they might be able to build together, Daniel felt certain of one thing: it would be worth it. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, on an ordinary Wednesday that started like any other. Daniel was in the middle of presenting a strategic operations proposal to Tim Breslin's team when someone's phone buzzed. Then another. Within seconds, half the conference room was staring at their screens with expressions ranging from shock to poorly concealed glee. "Sorry," Tim said, glancing at his own phone with a frown. "Can we take 5 minutes? Something's come up that needs immediate attention." Daniel watched as people filed out, whispering to each other, their eyes sliding toward him with something that looked like pity. His stomach dropped. Whatever had happened, it involved him. He pulled out his own phone to find 17 missed messages from Jessica. The first one made his blood run cold. Check the company forum, now. Helix had an internal message board where employees could post anonymously about workplace issues. It was supposed to be for legitimate concerns about policies or procedures. But like most anonymous forums, it often devolved into gossip and complaints. Daniel had avoided it religiously since his relationship with Lauren became public knowledge, not wanting to see what people were saying about him. Now he had no choice. The post was titled "Favoritism at the Highest Level, a Case Study." And it was brutal. Someone had compiled a detailed timeline of Daniel's career since joining Helix, highlighting every project he'd worked on, every assignment he'd received, every interaction he'd had with the executive team. The anonymous poster claimed to have evidence that Daniel had been receiving preferential treatment long before his relationship with Lauren became official, suggesting that they'd been involved for far longer than disclosed. The post included screenshots of emails, taken out of context but damning nonetheless, where Lauren had CC'd Daniel on strategic discussions, where she'd requested his input on campaigns, where she'd praised his work to other executives. Normal business communication, but framed as proof of an inappropriate relationship and career manipulation. The comment section was worse. Hundreds of posts from other employees, most anonymous, some not. People Daniel had worked with for years, people he'd considered friends, all weighing in with their theories and judgments. I always wondered how right landed the Dennison account. Now we know. This explains why mediocre work for marketing always got praised. Sleep your way to the top, I guess. Feel bad for his kid, growing up with a dad who has no integrity. That last comment made Daniel's hands shake. He closed the app before he could read more, but the damage was done. This wasn't just office gossip anymore. This was a coordinated attack on his character, his competence, his entire career. His phone rang. Lauren's name flashed on the screen. "Don't say anything," she said the moment he answered. "Don't respond to the post. Don't engage with anyone commenting. I'm handling it." "Lauren, I've already contacted IT about taking down the post. It violates our harassment policy, and I'm meeting with HR and legal in 10 minutes to discuss next steps." Her voice was sharp, controlled, but Daniel could hear the fury underneath. Whoever did this crossed a line. "You can't go after them," Daniel said, keeping his voice low even though the conference room was empty. "That's exactly what they want. Proof that you'll use your power to protect me. I don't care what they want. This is libel. It's character assassination." Lauren's control cracked slightly. "They brought your daughter into it, Daniel. They attacked your parenting. That's not acceptable." "I know it's not acceptable, but you coming down with the full force of the CEO's office only makes it worse." Daniel leaned against the conference table, exhaustion washing over him. "They'll say you're proving their point, that I can't fight my own battles, that I hide behind you. So what do you want me to do? Nothing? Just let them destroy your reputation? I want you to handle the policy violation through the appropriate channels. Take down the post because it violates harassment guidelines, not because it's about me specifically." Daniel took a breath. "And then I want to handle the rest myself." "How?" Lauren's voice was sharp with frustration. "How do you fight this? It's anonymous. It's everywhere. By noon, every employee in the company will have read it." "I know." Daniel closed his eyes, which is why I need to address it head on. No hiding, no deflecting, just the truth. "Daniel, trust me," he interrupted. "Please, I know what I'm doing." There was a long pause. Finally, Lauren spoke, her voice quieter. "Okay, but I'm one phone call away if you need me." "I know, thank you." After they hung up, Daniel sat alone in the conference room for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he opened his laptop and began typing. 20 minutes later, he posted his response on the company forum, using his real name and employee ID. No anonymity, no hiding. "To everyone who's read the post about me and my relationship with Lauren Cross, I want to address this directly. Yes, Lauren and I are in a relationship. We've filed all appropriate disclosure paperwork with HR. I was reassigned to operations specifically to eliminate any conflicts of interest or reporting structure issues. Every project I've worked on, every assignment I've received has been based on merit and business need. I have never asked for or received preferential treatment. I understand that our relationship raises questions. When there's a power differential, skepticism is natural and probably healthy. But I want to be absolutely clear. I am good at my job. I earned my position through hard work and results. My relationship with Lauren doesn't change that, and it never will. To the person who posted the original message, I don't know who you are or why you felt the need to attack me publicly. Maybe you genuinely believe I'm receiving unfair advantages. Maybe you're just uncomfortable with the situation. Either way, I wish you'd come to me directly instead of hiding behind anonymity. To everyone else, I get it. This is messy and complicated, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep doing excellent work, being a good father to my daughter, and yes, dating someone I care about. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for any of it. Daniel Wright, Operations Strategy. He posted it before he could second-guess himself, then sat back and waited for the response. It came quickly. Within minutes, the comment section exploded. Some people praised his honesty. Others doubled down on their criticism. A few defended him, pointing out that the original post had violated privacy and crossed ethical lines. The conversation became a referendum on workplace relationships, power dynamics, and whether Daniel's response was brave or arrogant. Tim Breslin appeared in the doorway of the conference room. Saw your post. And? Daniel braced himself for judgment. And I think you handled it exactly right. Direct, honest, no bullshit. Tim sat down across from him. For what it's worth, I've been watching your work since you joined my team. You're good, really good, and that has nothing to do with who you're dating. The validation shouldn't have mattered so much, but it did. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, this isn't over. Tim's expression was serious. That post did damage. Some people will never fully trust you now, no matter how well you perform. You need to be prepared for that. I know. But, Tim continued, there are also people who respect what you just did. Standing up publicly, owning your situation, not hiding behind corporate speak. That takes guts. Use that. After Tim left, Daniel returned to his desk to find Jessica waiting with coffee and a fierce expression. That post was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave, she said, thrusting the coffee into his hands. I'm not sure which one dominates. Probably stupid, Daniel admitted, but I couldn't just stay silent. No, you couldn't. Jessica lowered her voice. I did some digging. I think I know who posted the original message. Daniel's head snapped up. Who? Brian Teller. He applied for the same operations position you got. Didn't even make it past the first round of interviews because his work wasn't up to par. But he's been bitter about it, claiming it was rigged. Jessica's eyes were hard. He's been making comments for weeks about how you only got the job because of Lauren. The post reads exactly like his usual complaints. Can you prove it? Not definitively, but IT might be able to trace the IP address if they wanted to. Jessica paused. Are you going to report him? Daniel thought about it. Part of him wanted justice, wanted Brian Teller to face consequences for his actions. But another part knew that pursuing it would only extend the drama, give people more to talk about. No, he said finally. Let it go. If he's that insecure and petty, his career will sabotage itself eventually. The rest of the day was surreal. People Daniel barely knew stopped by his desk to express support or criticism. He received emails ranging from heartfelt encouragement to thinly veiled threats about what would happen if he kept flaunting his relationship. Through it all, Daniel kept his head down and focused on work, determined to prove through action what he'd claimed in words. That evening, he picked up Emma from school to find her unusually quiet. She didn't chatter about her day or demand to stop for ice cream. She just sat in the back seat, clutching her backpack and staring out the window. What's wrong, Bug? Daniel asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Mia said her mom said you're in trouble at work. Emma's voice was small. Because of Lauren. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Of course the gossip had spread beyond the office. Of course other parents were discussing it. And of course their children had overheard. He pulled into their driveway and turned to face his daughter. I'm not in trouble. Some people at work don't like that I'm dating Lauren, and they said some mean things about it. But I'm handling it. Why don't they like it? Because Lauren is my boss's boss's boss. They think that makes it complicated. Daniel unbuckled his seatbelt so he could fully face Emma. But here's the thing. Sometimes in life, people are going to disagree with your choices. Sometimes they're going to say mean things. And you have two options. You can hide and pretend you don't care, or you can stand up and be honest about who you are and what matters to you. What did you do? I stood up. I told the truth. Daniel reached back to squeeze Emma's hand. And I'm going to keep standing up no matter what people say. Because Lauren is important to me. And so are you. And I'm not going to hide either of those things. Emma seemed to process this. Is that why you're sad? I'm not sad exactly. More like tired. It's exhausting when people say mean things about you. Daniel managed to smile. But having you helps. Knowing I'm coming home to you makes everything else easier to handle. That seemed to satisfy Emma. She unbuckled herself and wrapped her arms around Daniel's neck from the back seat. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Bug. So much. They went inside and Daniel was making dinner when his phone rang. An unknown number, which he almost declined, but something made him answer. Mr. Wright, this is Caroline Mitchell from the Helix Board of Directors. Daniel's blood ran cold. Board members didn't call individual employees, ever. Ms. Mitchell, how can I help you? I wanted to speak with you directly about the situation that's developed regarding your relationship with Ms. Cross. Her tone was professional, but not unkind. I read your post on the company forum. It was candid. I believe in being direct, Daniel said carefully. As do I, which is why I'm calling. The board has been monitoring this situation closely. We have concerns about the optics, the potential for conflicts of interest, and the general workplace disruption. She paused. However, we also recognize that you and Ms. Cross have followed all appropriate protocols. The disclosure was timely, the reassignment was appropriate, and from what we can see, there's been no actual impropriety. Daniel wasn't sure where this was going. I appreciate that. What I'm calling to tell you, Mr. Wright, is that the board has decided to conduct an independent review of your work history and performance evaluations. We want to put to rest definitively whether you've received any preferential treatment. I understand. Daniel's mouth was dry. If the review shows your promotions and assignments were merit-based, which I personally suspect it will, we'll issue a statement to that effect. It won't silence all the critics, but it should provide an objective foundation for evaluating your career trajectory. Caroline's voice softened slightly. I know this is invasive. I know it's unfair that you're being scrutinized in ways other employees aren't, but I think, in the long run, it will help. When does the review start? Immediately. You'll be contacted by our external auditor within 48 hours. They'll need access to your files, your performance reviews, details on all projects you've worked on. She paused. Is there anything in your work history that concerns you? Anything that might not withstand scrutiny? No, Daniel said firmly. I've earned everything I have. I believe you, but Mr. Wright, understand that this isn't just about proving your competence. It's about protecting the company from liability claims and ensuring we can defend our personnel decisions if challenged. Caroline's tone became more gentle. You've put yourself in a very difficult position. I hope it's worth it. After she hung up, Daniel stood in his kitchen with the phone in his hand, trying to process what had just happened. An independent review, external auditors going through every aspect of his career. It was humiliating and invasive and exactly what needed to happen if he wanted to definitively prove his merit. He texted Lauren, "Just got a call from Caroline Mitchell. They're doing an independent review of my work history." Her response came immediately. I know, she called me first. I'm sorry. I tried to argue against it. Don't be sorry. It's the right thing to do. It's invasive and degrading, and you shouldn't have to prove yourself like this. But I do. We both know I do. Daniel set his phone down and focused on finishing dinner, on the normal routine that kept him grounded, but his mind was racing. The auditor arrived 2 days later, a professional woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in workplace ethics and human resources compliance. She spent 4 hours interviewing Daniel about his career history, his project assignments, his interactions with Lauren both before and after their relationship began. She was thorough and fair, but the process was exhausting. For the record, Dr. Chen said near the end of their session. "I've reviewed hundreds of employment files in my career. Your performance metrics are consistently strong. Your project outcomes exceed expectations. Your peer reviews are largely positive, though they've become more mixed recently for obvious reasons." "So you think I earned my positions?" Daniel asked. "I think the evidence suggests competence and merit, yes. But my job isn't to determine that conclusively yet. I need to complete my full analysis, compare your trajectory to others with similar experience levels, evaluate the timing of your promotions against company norms." She closed her laptop. "What I can tell you is that I haven't found any red flags that suggest impropriety. Whether that's enough to satisfy the court of public opinion is another question." The review process took 2 weeks. 2 weeks during which Daniel felt like he was living under a microscope. Dr. Chen interviewed his colleagues, analyzed his email communications, reviewed every project file he'd ever touched. She spoke with Tim Breslin, with Marcus, with people Daniel had worked with years ago when he first joined the company. Through it all, Daniel kept working. He threw himself into a major operations efficiency project, determined to prove that he could excel regardless of the scrutiny. He attended meetings, collaborated with teammates, and slowly began to rebuild relationships that had been strained by the scandal. Lauren stayed carefully distant at work, limiting their interactions to what was absolutely necessary for business purposes. But every evening, they talked on the phone, sometimes for hours, sometimes just for a few minutes. Those conversations became Daniel's lifeline, the reminder of why he was enduring all of this. "I miss you," Lauren said one night, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "I miss being able to see you without it becoming a spectacle. I miss normal." "We'll find a new normal," Daniel promised. "Once this review is done, once things settle down." Will they settle down? Or is this just what our lives are now? It was a question Daniel had asked himself repeatedly. "I don't know, but I know I don't want to give up." "Neither do I," Lauren said softly. "Even on the hard days, I don't want to give up." The review findings were released on a Friday afternoon. Dr. Chen's report was comprehensive and, to Daniel's relief, exonerating. She found no evidence of preferential treatment, no irregularities in his career progression, no indication that his relationship with Lauren had impacted his professional advancement. The board issued a statement shortly after. "Following an independent review of Daniel Wright's employment history and performance, we find no evidence of impropriety or favoritism. Mr. Wright's career advancement has been consistent with company standards and based on documented merit. While we maintain our policies regarding workplace relationships and disclosure requirements, we consider this matter closed from a compliance perspective." The response was mixed. Some people accepted the findings and moved on. Others claimed the review was a whitewash designed to protect Lauren. A few actually apologized to Daniel for jumping to conclusions. But the majority just stopped talking about it quite so loudly, the scandal losing its appeal as new office dramas emerged. Daniel was in his office when Jessica burst in with a bottle of sparkling cider and 2 plastic cups, celebrating the fact that you've been officially declared non-corrupt. "Is that what the report said?" Daniel accepted a cup with a tired smile. "Close enough." Jessica poured them each a generous serving. "You did it, Daniel. You weathered the storm, and you came out the other side with your integrity intact." "Barely," Daniel said. "There are still people who don't trust me, who think the review was rigged. There will always be people like that. But you know what? You can't control what other people think. You can only control your actions, and your actions have been consistently solid." Jessica raised her cup. "To surviving the impossible." "To surviving," Daniel echoed, clinking his plastic cup against hers. That evening, Lauren came to his house for the first time in 3 weeks. Emma was at a sleepover with Mia, a reconciliation of sorts after the earlier awkwardness, so they had the place to themselves. They sat on his couch with takeout containers spread across the coffee table, neither of them particularly hungry but both grateful for the excuse to be together. "I'm sorry," Lauren said suddenly. "For all of it, the scrutiny, the review, the way your life got turned inside out because of me. Not because of you, because of us, because we chose to be together despite the complications." Daniel set down his food and turned to face her fully. "And I'd choose it again. Even knowing everything that would happen, I'd still choose you." Lauren's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You showed up. You saw me. You made room in your impossibly busy life for a single dad with a 6-year-old in a mortgaged house and absolutely no glamour whatsoever. Daniel reached for her hand. You made me believe that I could be more than just functional, that I could actually be happy. You make me happy too, Lauren said. Even when everything else is chaos, you make me happy. They kissed then, soft and slow, taking their time after weeks of forced distance. When they finally pulled apart, Lauren was smiling. So what now? She asked. The review is done. The worst of the scandal has passed. Where do we go from here? Forward, Daniel said simply. We keep moving forward. We keep building this thing between us. We keep being honest with each other and with Emma and with everyone else who needs to know. He paused. And we stop letting other people's opinions dictate what we do. That sounds easier than it probably is. Most worthwhile things are. Daniel pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her. But we've made it this far. We can make it the rest of the way. They spent the evening talking about everything and nothing, rebuilding the intimacy that had been strained by weeks of crisis management. Around midnight, as Lauren was preparing to leave, she paused at the door. My sister is getting married in 3 months, in Colorado. It's a small family wedding, very intimate. She looked nervous. I'd like you to come, both you and Emma, if you're willing. Daniel felt something warm expand in his chest. Meeting the family, being included in important life events. These were signs of permanence, of a future that extended beyond just surviving the present. We'd love to come, he said. Lauren's smile was radiant. Yeah? Yeah, absolutely. After she left, Daniel stood in his quiet house and thought about how far they'd come in just a few months. From a whispered comment at a wedding to weathering a public scandal to planning family trips together. The path had been brutal at times, the cost higher than he'd anticipated. But standing there in his living room, thinking about Lauren's smile and the life they were building together, Daniel knew with absolute certainty that it had been worth every difficult moment. His phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for being brave enough to fight for this. Daniel typed back. Thank you for being worth fighting for. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Families settled in for the night. Inside, Daniel felt a peace that had eluded him for weeks. The storm had passed. The worst was behind them. And ahead, stretching out into a future he could finally see clearly, was the possibility of something real and lasting. He climbed the stairs to bed, exhausted but content. Tomorrow he would go back to work and face whatever residual judgment remained. He would pick up Emma from her sleepover and hear about all the adventures she'd had. He would text Lauren throughout the day, building those small connections that sustained them. But tonight, he could rest. Tonight, he could believe that choosing love over fear had been exactly the right decision. 3 months passed like water-smoothing stones, slowly reshaping the landscape of Daniel's life into something he barely recognized but deeply cherished. The gossip at Helix didn't disappear overnight, but it evolved from sharp-edged scandal to background noise, the kind of settled knowledge that people acknowledged and then moved past. Daniel proved himself in operations with the efficiency restructuring project that saved the company nearly $2 million annually. Tim Breslin publicly praised his work in a quarterly meeting, and slowly, grudgingly, even the skeptics had to admit that maybe Daniel Wright was actually good at his job. The real shift came when Brian Teller was quietly let go for performance issues unrelated to the Forum Post. Jessica had been right. His bitterness had infected his work, and eventually his results spoke louder than his complaints. Daniel felt no satisfaction in it, just a quiet relief that the source of so much venom was no longer a daily presence. Now, standing in the Denver airport baggage claim with Emma practically vibrating with excitement beside him, Daniel felt the full weight of how much had changed. They were here for Lauren's sister's wedding, and Emma had talked of nothing else for weeks. Do you think there will be a flower girl? Can I be friends with the flower girl? What if there's no flower girl? Will there be cake? Daddy, what kind of cake do you think they'll have? Bug, take a breath, Daniel said, laughing as he spotted their luggage on the carousel. We just got here. You'll find out all of this soon enough. Lauren had flown in 2 days earlier to help with wedding preparations, and the separation had felt longer than it should have. They'd seen each other nearly every day for the past month, falling into a comfortable rhythm of weeknight dinners at his place after Emma was asleep, Sunday afternoon adventures with Emma to museums or parks, or anywhere the 7-year-old's curiosity led them, and stolen moments of just being together. His phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "I'm outside in a blue rental SUV. Fair warning, my mother is with me and she's armed with opinions about everything." Daniel smiled, typing back, "Emma has prepared approximately 400 questions about the wedding. This should be interesting." When they emerged from the airport, Lauren was indeed waiting beside a blue SUV, but she wasn't alone. The woman beside her was clearly her mother, same bone structure, same intelligent eyes, though her hair was silver and her expression considerably more guarded. "Daniel, Emma, this is my mother, Patricia Cross." Lauren's voice carried a note of nervous formality Daniel had never heard before. "Mom, this is Daniel Wright and his daughter Emma." Patricia's handshake was firm, her assessment thorough. "Mr. Wright, I've heard quite a bit about you." "All good things, I hope," Daniel said, keeping his tone light. "Mostly complicated things," Patricia said with brutal honesty. "But my daughter seems convinced you're worth the complications, so I suppose we'll find out." Emma, blessedly oblivious to the tension, piped up from beside Daniel. "Are you Lauren's mom? You look like her but with different hair. Do you like dinosaurs? Lauren's learning about them because of me." Patricia's severe expression cracked slightly. "I can't say I've given dinosaurs much thought in recent decades, but I'd be interested to hear what makes them so fascinating." As Emma launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the difference between the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, Daniel caught Lauren's eye over the SUV. She mouthed, "Sorry," and he shook his head slightly, smiling. This was part of it. Meeting families, navigating different personalities, building bridges between the separate parts of their lives. The drive to the resort where the wedding would take place took just over an hour. Patricia peppered Daniel with questions that were clearly designed to assess his character, his intentions, his fitness as a partner for her daughter. She was subtle about it, framing everything as polite conversation, but Daniel recognized an interrogation when he was in one. "So you're a single father. That must be challenging, balancing career and parenting." "It has its moments," Daniel admitted, "but Emma's worth every sacrifice. And I've been lucky to have good support systems." "And your family? Are they nearby?" "My parents are in Arizona. We're not particularly close. They weren't thrilled about Emma being born outside of marriage, and we've kept our distance since then." Daniel kept his voice even. "But Emma has people who love her. Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor, my friend Marcus and his wife, and now Lauren." He felt Lauren's hand briefly touch his shoulder from the front seat, a gesture of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by Patricia. The resort was beautiful, nestled in the mountains with views that made Emma gasp. Their rooms were in the main lodge, Daniel and Emma sharing a suite while Lauren was housed with her family in a separate building. As they checked in, Lauren's sister Claire appeared in the lobby, a whirlwind of energy and wedding stress. "You must be Daniel." She grabbed him in a hug before he could respond. "And this is Emma. Lauren's told me so much about both of you. Emma, do you want to see the room where we're having the reception? There's a chocolate fountain." Emma's eyes went wide. "Can I, Daddy?" "Go ahead," Daniel said, watching as Claire whisked his daughter away with the ease of someone who loved children. He turned to Lauren. "Your sister seems nice." "Claire's the best," Lauren said, some of the tension leaving her shoulders now that Patricia had gone to her own room. "She's been incredibly supportive through all of this, unlike my mother, who thinks I've lost my mind." "Has she said that?" "Not in those exact words. But she's made it clear she thinks I'm risking everything I've built for a relationship that's statistically unlikely to work out." Lauren's smile was strained. "She means well. She's just protective. She's your mom. She's supposed to be protective." Daniel pulled Lauren into a quick hug, mindful that they were still in a semi-public space. "We'll win her over." "You sound confident." "I am. Emma's already working on her. Give it 24 hours and your mother will be asking about dinosaurs and making friendship bracelets." Lauren laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I've missed you, even though it's only been 2 days." "I've missed you too." The next day was a blur of wedding activities. There was a welcome brunch where Daniel met what felt like Lauren's entire extended family. Aunts and uncles and cousins, all of whom seemed to have heard about the CEO dating her employee, and all of whom had opinions about it. Some were supportive, curious about the man who'd captured Lauren's attention. Others were more skeptical, their questions pointed and their smiles tight. Emma, oblivious to the undercurrents, charmed everyone she encountered. She helped Claire's daughter arrange flowers, participated in the rehearsal as an honorary junior bridesmaid despite not being part of the actual ceremony, and convinced Lauren's father, a quiet man who'd said approximately 5 words since they arrived, to explain the geological history of the surrounding mountains. "Your daughter is remarkable," Patricia said to Daniel during a quiet moment on the resort terrace. They were watching Emma play with other children near the outdoor fire pit, her laughter carrying across the evening air. "She is," Daniel agreed, "though I can't take much credit. She came into the world that way." "I doubt that. Children reflect their environments. The fact that she's so confident, so curious, so comfortable with adults, that speaks to how you've raised her." Patricia paused. "My daughter has never introduced us to anyone she's dated, not in all the years since college. The fact that she brought you here, that she wanted us to meet Emma, tells me this is serious." "It is," Daniel said simply, "for both of us." "Are you prepared for what that means? Not just the workplace complications, which I understand have been significant, but the long-term reality of being with someone like Lauren." Patricia's gaze was direct. "She's brilliant and driven and absolutely incapable of not being the person in charge. She works 70-hour weeks. She carries the weight of thousands of employees' livelihoods on her shoulders. She's been married to that company since she took over as CEO." "I know," Daniel said. "I've seen it firsthand, but I've also seen her with Emma, teaching herself about dinosaurs because it matters to my daughter. I've seen her show up at my house at midnight just because I had a hard day and needed someone to talk to. I've seen her be vulnerable and uncertain and human in ways I don't think she lets most people see." Patricia studied him for a long moment. "You love her." It wasn't a question, but Daniel answered anyway. "Yes, I do." "Does she know?" "Not yet. We've been so focused on surviving the scandal and navigating the workplace dynamics that we haven't really talked about the future." Daniel watched Emma cartwheel across the grass, her joy infectious. "But I'm planning to tell her, soon." "Good. Because my daughter has spent her entire adult life being afraid to meet anyone. If you're going to be with her, you need to be someone she can actually depend on, not someone who's intimidated by her success or threatened by her ambition." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "From what I've seen, you might actually be that person." It was as close to a blessing as Daniel suspected he was going to get, and he'd take it. The wedding day arrived with perfect Colorado weather, clear blue skies, comfortable temperature, mountain views that looked like something from a postcard. Daniel wore the suit he'd bought specifically for this occasion, a charcoal gray that Emma had declared made him look fancy like a movie star. Emma wore a purple dress she'd picked out herself, her hair in careful braids that Lauren had helped with that morning. The ceremony was held outdoors in a garden area of the resort, chairs arranged in neat rows facing an arch covered in white roses. Daniel sat with Emma in the 3rd row, close enough to see Lauren clearly. She was in the front row with her family, wearing a navy dress that made his breath catch. She glanced back once before the ceremony started, caught his eye, and smiled. The ceremony itself was beautiful and personal, Claire and her groom exchanging vows they'd written themselves. Emma whispered approximately 1,000 questions throughout. "Why is she crying? Is she sad? Why would you cry if you're happy? Can I get married someday? What happens after they kiss?" But Daniel barely heard her. He was too busy watching Lauren, thinking about Patricia's question, about the future he could see taking shape if he was brave enough to reach for it. At the reception, dinner was served family style at long tables, and Daniel found himself seated between Emma and one of Lauren's cousins, a journalist named Michael, who immediately launched into questions about the Helix scandal. "So you're the guy who survived dating the CEO?" Michael said, with what might have been admiration or mockery. Daniel couldn't quite tell. "That takes either courage or stupidity. I haven't decided which." "Maybe both," Daniel said evenly, "but it's working out so far. The review cleared you, right? Found no evidence of favoritism?" "That's correct. But there are still people at the company who don't believe it, who think you got special treatment." Michael leaned closer. How do you handle that? The constant second guessing, the assumption that you haven't earned your position? Daniel was saved from answering by Emma tugging on his sleeve. Daddy, Lauren's mom wants to talk to you. Patricia was indeed approaching their table, but her expression was warmer than it had been the previous day. Daniel, would you mind if I borrowed Emma for a moment? The bride is about to throw her bouquet, and I thought she might enjoy being part of it. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Can I, Daddy? Go ahead, Bug. Daniel watched Patricia lead Emma toward where Claire was gathering all the single women and girls. When he looked back, Michael was smiling. Patricia Cross doesn't warm up to people easily. The fact that she's including your daughter means you've passed some kind of test. Michael raised his glass. Congratulations! You might actually survive this. After dinner, there was dancing. Daniel watched from his table as couples filled the floor, as Claire and her new husband shared their first dance, as Lauren danced with her father looking simultaneously happy and uncomfortable with the attention. When the DJ opened the floor to everyone, Emma immediately grabbed his hand. Dance with me, Daddy, please! They danced to 3 songs, Emma standing on his feet as he swayed in vaguely rhythmic patterns, both of them laughing when he accidentally stepped on his own foot. When Emma was finally distracted by the dessert table, Lauren appeared at his elbow. May I have this dance? The song was slow, something romantic and classic that Daniel didn't recognize. He pulled Lauren into his arms, hyper-aware of her family watching, of Patricia's assessing gaze, of Emma eating cake at a nearby table with Claire's daughter. Your mother interrogated me yesterday, Daniel said quietly. Asked if I was prepared for what being with you meant long term. I'm sorry, she can be intense. Don't be sorry, she was right to ask. Daniel met Lauren's eyes. And I am prepared for all of it. The long hours, the pressure, the reality that your work will always be demanding. I'm not threatened by your success, Lauren. I'm in awe of it. Lauren's hand tightened on his shoulder. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You took a chance on a single dad with a 6-year-old and a complicated life. You showed up. You kept showing up even when things got hard. Daniel pulled her slightly closer, no longer caring who was watching. I love you. I should have said it weeks ago, but I was scared and uncertain and trying to survive each day. But I'm saying it now. I love you. Lauren's breath caught. Daniel, you don't have to say it back, not if you're not ready. I just needed you to know. He smiled. Though for the record, I'm hoping you feel the same way. I do. Lauren's eyes were bright with tears. I absolutely do. I love you. I've been terrified to say it because it makes everything so much more real, but I love you. I love Emma. I love the life we're building together. They kissed there on the dance floor, surrounded by Lauren's family and wedding guests, no longer hiding or qualifying or apologizing for what they felt. When they finally pulled apart, Daniel noticed Patricia watching from her table. She raised her glass slightly, a gesture that felt like approval, like acceptance. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of celebration. Emma danced with nearly everyone, collected cake from 3 different sources, and eventually fell asleep in Daniel's arms while the party continued around them. Lauren helped him carry Emma back to their room, and they tucked her into bed together, a preview of the kind of domestic partnership they were building. Stay, Daniel said when Lauren started to leave. Just for a while. We don't get many moments like this, just the 3 of us. Lauren settled onto the couch in the suite sitting area, and Daniel joined her. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Emma sleep through the open bedroom door, both of them processing everything that had happened. My contract with Helix is up for renewal in 6 months, Lauren said suddenly. The board wants me to sign for another 3 years, but I'm thinking about negotiating down to 2. Daniel looked at her in surprise. Why? Because I'm tired of the 70-hour weeks, tired of missing dinners and weekends and life happening around me while I'm in another meeting. Lauren laced her fingers through his. I'm not leaving or stepping down, but I want more balance. I want time for you and Emma. I want to be present for the life I'm building outside of work. The board will push back. Let them. I've built that company into what it is. I've exceeded every metric, delivered consistent growth, navigated a pandemic and a recession. I've earned the right to set some boundaries. Lauren's voice was firm. And I've realized that being CEO doesn't have to mean sacrificing everything else. I can be good at my job and still have a personal life. I support whatever you decide, Daniel said. But make sure you're doing it for you, not because you think you need to change for me. I'm doing it for us, for the family we're becoming. Lauren paused. Speaking of which, I've been thinking, my apartment is too small for 3 people, and your house is pretty cramped with Emma growing so fast. What would you think about finding a place together? Something bigger, with space for all of us? Daniel's heart rate picked up. You want to move in together? Eventually. I'm not saying tomorrow, and I know it's complicated with Emma and making sure she's comfortable with the change. But yes, I want us to live together. I want Sunday mornings and shared dinners and all the mundane, wonderful parts of building a life with someone. Lauren squeezed his hand. What do you think? I think Emma would love it. She already asks when Lauren's coming over about 3 times a day. Daniel smiled. And I would love it too. But you're right that we need to do it carefully. Make sure Emma's ready, find the right place, do it all intentionally. So we're doing this? Actually planning a future together? We're doing this, Daniel confirmed. Though fair warning, living with a 7-year-old means dinosaur facts at breakfast and negotiations over bedtime that would put your board meetings to shame. Lauren laughed. I think I can handle it. They talked for another hour, making tentative plans, discussing timelines, imagining what their combined life might look like. When Lauren finally left to return to her own room, Daniel sat alone in the quiet suite, feeling a contentment he'd never quite experienced before. Everything had fallen into place not because it was easy, but because they'd chosen to fight for it. The flight back home 2 days later felt different. Emma chattered about the wedding, about the chocolate fountain, and the dancing and how Claire had let her keep a flower from the centerpieces. But underneath her excitement, Daniel could sense her processing the changes that were coming. Lauren's going to live with us, isn't she? Emma asked as they waited at the gate for boarding. Eventually, yes, if that's okay with you. Emma was quiet for a moment, swinging her legs from the airport chair. Will she be my mom then? Daniel crouched down to eye level with his daughter. She'll be your stepmom, which is different from your birth mom. But she'll be someone who loves you and takes care of you and wants to be part of your life. Is that something you'd want? Yes, Emma said without hesitation. I like Lauren. She's nice to me and she listens when I talk about dinosaurs and she makes you happy. I want her to live with us. Good. Because I want that too. Daniel hugged his daughter, and I promise we'll do this carefully. Make sure you're comfortable every step of the way. This is your home too, and your feelings matter. The return to work the following Monday felt different as well. Daniel had been gone less than a week, but somehow the office seemed smaller, less intimidating than it had before. The scandal was old news now. People had moved on to newer gossip, fresher drama. He was just Daniel Wright, operations strategist, no longer the subject of constant speculation. Tim Breslin stopped by his desk mid-morning. Welcome back. How was the wedding? Beautiful. Colorado was gorgeous. Daniel pulled up the project files he'd been working on before the trip. Anything urgent happen while I was gone? Nothing that couldn't wait, though Lauren's been looking for you. Something about a cross-departmental initiative she wants your input on. Daniel tried not to smile at the use of Lauren's first name. Tim had finally stopped referring to her exclusively as Ms. Cross, or the CEO, a small but significant shift in how he viewed their relationship. He found Lauren in her office an hour later, ostensibly to discuss the initiative, but really just because he wanted to see her. They'd maintained careful distance at the airport and on the flight, not wanting to make other passengers uncomfortable, but now in the relative privacy of her office, she smiled at him with genuine warmth. "Close the door," she said, and when he did, she crossed to him and kissed him properly. "I've been waiting to do that since we left Colorado." Professional workplace behavior, Daniel murmured against her lips. "We should probably not make out in your office." "Probably not," Lauren agreed, but she kissed him again anyway before stepping back. "Though I actually did want to talk to you about something work-related. The board approved a new efficiency task force, and they want someone from operations to co-lead with someone from my team. I recommended you." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Lauren, before you object, this has nothing to do with our relationship. Tim agreed you were the right choice based on your recent project outcomes. The board signed off after reviewing your credentials. This is entirely merit-based. She held up a hand. But I wanted to tell you before it was officially announced so you could decide if you're comfortable with it. If you think it looks bad, I can recommend someone else. Daniel thought about it. 6 months ago, he would have refused automatically, too worried about perception. But he'd proven himself. The review had cleared him. He'd earned his place through solid work. I'll do it, he said. But I want everything documented. Clear criteria for why I was selected, transparent reporting structure, regular check-ins with HR to ensure there's no appearance of impropriety. Already done. I learned my lesson about documentation. Lauren's smile was proud. You're going to be great at this. The task force position turned out to be exactly the kind of high-visibility project Daniel needed. Over the next 3 months, he worked closely with teams across the company, delivering presentations to the board, implementing changes that resulted in measurable improvements. His reputation shifted from the guy dating the CEO to the guy who actually knows what he's doing. During those same 3 months, he and Lauren house hunted. They found a place in a neighborhood with good schools, a 4-bedroom house with a yard where Emma could play, and enough space for all of them to have their own areas. The closing was scheduled for early December, just before the holidays. Emma was involved in every decision, from which bedroom would be hers to what color to paint the kitchen. Lauren made a point of asking Emma's opinion, of making sure the 7-year-old felt ownership over the space that would become their shared home. The move-in day arrived on a Saturday with help from Marcus and Stephanie, Jessica, and even Tim Breslin, who showed up with his truck and a willingness to carry heavy furniture. Patricia flew in to help as well, a gesture that surprised Daniel until he saw how natural she was with Emma, how easily they'd bonded over the past few months. "You're good for my daughter," Patricia told Daniel while they unpacked kitchen boxes. "I wasn't sure at first, but I was wrong. You've made her happy in ways I didn't think were possible." "She's made me happy too," Daniel said. "She's made us happy." That evening, after all the boxes were unpacked and the helpers had left and Emma was asleep in her new bedroom, Daniel and Lauren stood in their living room surveying what they'd built. Not just the house, but the life it represented. "We did it," Lauren said softly. "We actually made it work. Did you doubt we would?" "Sometimes, on the hard days when it felt like the whole world was against us." Lauren leaned into him. "But we kept choosing each other. That made all the difference." 6 weeks later, on a Sunday morning with snow falling gently outside their kitchen windows, Daniel made pancakes while Lauren helped Emma with a school project about family trees. The domesticity of it all would have seemed impossible a year ago when he'd stood at that waterfront wedding trying to navigate a conversation with a woman who seemed impossibly out of reach. Now she sat at his kitchen table, their kitchen table, in sweatpants and one of his old t-shirts, explaining to Emma how to draw connecting lines between family members while simultaneously answering work emails on her phone. "Daddy, where do I put Lauren on the tree?" Emma asked, looking up from her poster board. Daniel glanced at Lauren, who'd gone very still. They talked about this moment, about when and how to make things official, but Emma's innocent question brought it into sharp focus. "That's a good question, Bug," Daniel said carefully. "Where do you think she should go?" "Well, she lives with us and she helps take care of me and she loves you and you love her." Emma spoke with the logical precision of a 7-year-old stating obvious facts. "So she should go where a mom goes, right? Or a stepmom?" Lauren set down her phone, her eyes bright. "Would you be okay with that? With me being your stepmom officially?" "Are you going to marry my dad?" Emma asked bluntly. Daniel nearly dropped the spatula. Lauren laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "We haven't really discussed that timeline yet," Lauren managed. "But yes, someday, I hope we will." "Then yes, I'm okay with it." Emma went back to her poster. "I'm going to draw you right here next to Daddy, and I'll put hearts around it because you love each other." After Emma went to her room to add more details to her project, Daniel turned to Lauren. "So, marriage. Apparently we're discussing that now." "Apparently." Lauren's smile was tentative. "Is that something you want? Eventually?" "Yes," Daniel said without hesitation. "I want all of it. The partnership, the commitment, the legal and emotional entanglement of our lives. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know that we chose this, that we built this together despite every obstacle. I want that too. Lauren moved closer, her hands finding his. I never thought I'd want it, honestly. I was so focused on my career, so convinced that personal relationships were a distraction. But you changed that. You and Emma showed me that I could have both, that I could be successful and also be loved. You were always worthy of being loved, Daniel said. You just needed to find someone who saw past the CEO to the person underneath. They kissed there in the kitchen with pancakes cooling on the stove, and Emma's family tree project spread across the table and their whole future stretching out before them. It wasn't perfect. There would still be challenges, workplace dynamics to navigate, Emma's needs to prioritize, Lauren's demanding career to balance. But they'd proven they could handle complicated. They'd proven they could choose each other again and again, even when it was hard. 3 months later, on a Saturday afternoon in March, Daniel took Emma to the park while Lauren was supposedly catching up on work emails. But when they returned home, they found the living room transformed. Candles everywhere, rose petals scattered across the floor, and Lauren standing in the center of it all, wearing a nervous smile. "Emma, do you remember when you asked if I was going to marry your dad?" Lauren's voice was steady despite the tears threatening to spill over. Emma nodded, her eyes wide as she took in the romantic setup. "Well, I'd like to ask him officially, but I wanted to ask you first if that would be okay with you, if you'd be okay with me becoming part of your family forever." Emma looked at Daniel, then back at Lauren. "Like officially, with a wedding and everything?" "Exactly like that." "Yes!" Emma launched herself at Lauren, wrapping her arms around her waist. "Yes, yes, yes. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress?" Lauren laughed through her tears, hugging Emma back. "You can definitely be in the wedding and wear the fanciest dress we can find." After Emma had been sufficiently reassured about her role in the ceremony, Lauren turned to Daniel. She didn't kneel. That felt too formal for who they were. But she did take his hands in hers. "Daniel Wright, you made me believe in things I thought were impossible. You saw me when I was invisible to myself. You fought for us when it would have been easier to walk away. You've shown me that being strong doesn't mean being alone, that success is hollow without someone to share it with." Lauren's voice cracked slightly. "You've given me a family, a home, a life that matters beyond quarterly earnings and board meetings. So yes, I know Emma asked the question first, but I'm asking it now. Will you marry me?" Daniel pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as Emma bounced excitedly beside them. "Yes, absolutely yes." The kiss they shared was witnessed by a 7-year-old who made gagging sounds but was clearly delighted, in a living room of a house they'd chosen together, in a life they'd built through choosing courage over fear. The wedding happened 6 months later, a small ceremony at the same waterfront venue where Marcus had gotten married, where this entire journey had begun. Emma stood beside them as junior maid of honor, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself and holding a bouquet of flowers while trying very hard to stand still. Marcus was Daniel's best man, Jessica was one of Lauren's bridesmaids, and Patricia sat in the front row with actual tears streaming down her face. Tim Breslin attended, as did many of their colleagues from Helix, the whispers from a year ago replaced with genuine celebration. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, there was only supportive silence. When Daniel and Lauren exchanged vows they'd written themselves, talking about choosing each other every day and building something stronger than scandal, there wasn't a dry eye in the attendance. And when they were finally pronounced married, when they kissed to enthusiastic applause, Emma shouted, "Finally!" loud enough for everyone to hear, getting a laugh from the assembled guests. At the reception, Daniel found himself standing in almost the exact spot where he'd stood over a year ago, watching couples dance and feeling disconnected from the romance of it all. But now Lauren was beside him, a ring on her finger matching the one on his, and Emma was dancing with Patricia, and everything had changed. "Do you remember what you said to me?" Lauren asked. "At the ceremony, during Marcus's wedding." "Stop looking at the bride. Look at me," Daniel quoted, smiling at the memory. "I knew even then," Lauren said, "that you were going to change everything. I just didn't know how much." "Scared you?" "Terrified me." Lauren laced her fingers through his. "Best decision I ever made, being terrified and doing it anyway." They danced their first dance as husband and wife, and later Daniel danced with Emma while Lauren danced with her father. The evening passed in a blur of celebration and joy, and when it was finally over, when Emma was staying the night with Patricia, so Daniel and Lauren could have their wedding night alone, they stood together on the terrace overlooking the water. "We made it," Daniel said quietly. "We did." Lauren leaned against him, both of them looking out at the same harbor where this had all begun. Through the scandal and the scrutiny and all the people who said it couldn't work. "We actually made it. Because we kept showing up. We kept choosing each other. And we always will," Lauren promised. Below them, boats drifted across the water, their lights reflecting on the surface. Behind them, the reception venue was being cleaned up. The celebration ending, but the marriage just beginning. And ahead of them stretched a future they'd fought for, a life they'd built through courage and commitment and the simple revolutionary act of believing that love was worth the risk. Daniel thought about the man he'd been a year ago, cautious, careful, convinced that his life was meant to be small and safe. That man would never have believed he'd end up here, married to the CEO, with a daughter who had a mother figure she adored, with a career he'd built on his own merit despite every obstacle. But he'd learned something important over the past year. Sometimes the biggest risks led to the greatest rewards. Sometimes choosing love over fear was the bravest thing you could do. And sometimes, when you stopped looking at where you thought you should be and started looking at what was actually in front of you, you found everything you'd been searching for. "Ready to go home?" Lauren asked. Home. Not just a house, but a life they'd built together, a family they'd chosen. "Yeah," Daniel said, pulling his wife close. "Let's go home." And as they walked away from the terrace, from the venue where their story had begun, Daniel realized that endings and beginnings were really just different perspectives on the same moment. This was the end of the journey that had started with a whispered comment at a wedding, but it was also the beginning of everything else: the marriage, the family, the life they'd spend the rest of their days building together. Emma was waiting for them when they picked her up the next morning, bursting with stories about her sleepover with Patricia and demanding to know every detail of the wedding night that was appropriate for a 7-year-old to hear. They drove home together, the three of them, to the house they shared and the life they were creating. And if Daniel's mind occasionally wandered back to that moment on the terrace a year ago, to Lauren's bold whisper, and the way everything had changed in an instant, he only smiled. Because that moment had led to this one, and this one was exactly where he was meant to be.